Chapter 2400. It was just that this Jasper Flower Great Emperor was already a different person. Dong Wang, Shui Leihan. Shui Leihan had an elegant temperament to begin with, and Xie Danqiong was also from an aristocratic family. Apart from the lack of Dong Wang's majestic aura, their temperaments were not very different. If Xie Danqiong were to impersonate Shui Leihan now, it would be extremely difficult. However, Shui Leihan impersonated Xie Danqiong perfectly. Not to mention others, even Brother Jia couldn't tell the difference at all. Only Madame Mei, Xie Danqiong's wife, could tell at a glance when she saw this impersonator. Because this fake Xie Danqiong didn't have that kind of deep love for her at all. Besides, she didn't have that kind of impulse to jump into his arms the moment she saw him. This was especially important. But no matter what, this impersonation was already a complete success. Just like that, silently, in front of all the heroes of the world, surrounded by Di and Empress, the impersonation was successfully impersonated. Even the Demon Empress, who was already aware of this matter, didn't notice this trick. Shui Leihan's eyes flashed with a faint, murderous intent. This time, Dong Wang had already made up his mind to use Xie Danqiong's appearance to start a massacre. He would kill all those who dared to come and cause trouble at this moment until their blood flowed like a river. I haven't killed for so many years I seem to miss it. It also makes people forget the majesty of Di and Empress back then. Looks like Zihao is still right. There's no need to show mercy to those who deserve to be killed. Let me make the world tremble for once today. Shui Leihan's impersonation of Xie Danqiong had a gentle smile on his face. He was calm and confident. No one could see that on this gentle and confident face, there was also a dark and cold murderous intent. And once this murderous intent was unleashed, it was enough to slaughter the world. The MC's voice was filled with heartfelt excitement as it boomed. After suffering so much, the people of Maoyun Heaven finally welcome their destiny today. The land of destiny welcomes the true master of Maoyun Heaven. Jasper Flower Great Emperor's ascension to the throne is exactly what the people of Maoyun Heaven hope for. All the people of the world are sincerely convinced. Just as the MC was shouting himself hoarse, a certain fake Jasper Flower Great Emperor was about to step onto the first step. Suddenly, someone shouted like a thunderclap. I'm not convinced! Emperor Jasper Flower's footsteps suddenly halted. Then, someone laughed coldly and said, How can a mere Xie Danqiong be the celestial emperor of a region? I'm also not convinced! In the next moment, another person said, What do you mean by no one is convinced? I refuse to accept this. What virtue and ability do you have? You're nothing more than making up the numbers, vainly attempting to seize the position of a celestial emperor. How disdainful! This series of voices caused the entire place to fall into an unprecedented silence. In the next moment, a holy light suddenly bloomed in the sky. Many rainbows flashed across the sky, and several figures appeared in the sky. One in the east, one in the south, one in the north, and one in the west. Although these 4 people came from different directions, they gathered together and stood together in the sky. They looked at Shui Leihan, who was disguised as Xie Danqiong, with an attitude of looking down on the world. Their unscrupulous intentions were obvious. This sudden turn of events caused everyone to feel astonished from the bottom of their hearts. This included even the few heavenly emperors who were completely unaware of this. It must be known that at such a celestial emperor's ascension ceremony, when Di and Empress were gathered, there were actually people who jumped out and clearly expressed their intention to cause trouble. This was directly equivalent to slapping Di and Empress in the face. Should this group of people be said to be retarded, or should they be said to be retarded? However, regardless of whether they were idiots or had ulterior motives, the 4 people who came were all super experts. Not to mention other things, just their ability to transform into rainbows was already no small matter. That was the universal illumination realm that only high-level sages and above could achieve. In other words, these 4 people who came had at least reached the level of high-level saints. They might even be infinitely close to the peak of saints. Any one of these experts, no matter which world they were in, was a top-notch ruthless character. Although they couldn't be compared to Dee and Empress, they weren't inferior to the 7-star guards of the various big worlds. What are your intentions for coming here to cause trouble? Mu Tsunglan took a deep breath and shouted angrily. He asked what are their intentions. But he didn't ask about these people's identities and origins. This undoubtedly showed that Mu Tsunglan knew these people and was completely aware of their origins. Moreover, he was inexplicably shocked. At least Mu Tsunglan himself wasn't confident that he could deal with these people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked but directly attacked. Even an expert like Mu Tsunglan knew that he was no match for them. From this, it could be seen that these 4 people were extremely powerful. In the north, there was a person dressed in white. He had a scholarly and handsome appearance, and had a graceful demeanor. He laughed softly and said, Our Mayun heaven is changing the world and is about to appoint a new emperor. This is a huge matter. With such a grand occasion, how can I, Zhuang Shaochen, not come to join in the fun and broaden my horizons? He smiled softly and said, Moreover, I was deceived by the heavenly demon in the battle with Yuan Tianji 1,000,000 years ago. How can I not wash away this humiliation and end this karma? Mu Tsunglan said coldly, Zhuang Shaochen, if you want to wash away this humiliation and end this karma, why don't you find Yuan Tianji early on to determine the winner? You shouldn't have come here to cause trouble after Yuan Tianji was killed. The person you are looking for isn't here. Zhuang Shaochen smiled. General Mu's words are wrong. Although Yuan Tianji has become a dead ghost, he was still the heavenly emperor of Ink Cloud. Although the previous heavenly emperor of Ink Cloud is dead, the successor is still around. I naturally have to find him to fight. Moreover, Ink Cloud Heaven is going to appoint a new heavenly emperor. Then, the new heavenly emperor's cultivation should at least be able to convince the masses, right? Now that I'm standing out, it's nothing more than to throw a brick to attract jade in front of the heroes of the world, to let His Majesty, the Sky Emperor, show his peerless cultivation. I'm really well-intentioned, how can you say I'm making trouble? Zhuang Shaochen spoke vehemently. His smile was very gentle and honest, and he looked neither servile nor overbearing. Mu Tsunglan gritted his teeth in hatred. Although he knew that this person was twisting words and forcing logic, but when the previous heavenly emperors ascended the throne, there was indeed such a saying. However, the situation this time was special and was different from the past. This Zhuang Shaochen was one of the few peerless experts in Ink Cloud Heaven. Back then, he was as famous as the 7 kings. In the battle for the heavenly emperor's throne, he was defeated by Yuan Tianji and was seriously injured. From then on, he disappeared. Mu Tsunglan thought that this guy had already fallen, but he never thought that at such a critical moment, this guy would actually jump out of thin air and challenge Xie Danqiong. There was no doubt that he wanted to humiliate the Jade Flower Emperor. For a moment, he was at a loss and was at a loss. Mu Tsunglan suppressed his anger and turned to ask the person from the east, Suyun Cheng, what are you doing here? Suyun had a square face and big ears. His face looked like a rich man, but his eyes flashed with a cold light, and said, The ancient law of the heavenly imperial court, the strong are the kings, the weak are the ministers, the position of the heavenly emperor, must be held by someone whose martial strength can surpass the world. Yuan Tianji was able to hold the position of heavenly emperor that day, precisely because he defeated all the people who competed for the position of emperor that day. What ability does Xie Danqiong have to dare to occupy this position? If I defeat Xie Danqiong, then I will be the heavenly emperor. If I can't even hold the position of emperor, how can I protect the peace of this world? The person from the west clapped his hands and praised. Not bad, not bad. I and Ye Qianlong also have the same idea. The heavenly emperor's throne will take turns. If others can do it, why can't I? If you want me to give up, Xie Danqiong will have to defeat me personally. The person from the south was also a handsome man in a white robe. 3 strands of beard fluttered in the wind. He looked like an immortal. At this moment, he had a faint smile on his face and elegantly said, That's right. I, Chu Wu Liang, also have the same idea. When these 4 people appeared and announced their names, everyone who knew these 4 people turned pale with fright. Divine Lightning Frost King Zhuang Shaoqin. Golden Blade King Su Yunqing. Sky Flipping Spear King Ye Qianlong. Great Deer Mountain King Chu Wuliang. These people were all famous king-level experts of the black cloud sky. They were all top figures on par with the Heart King, Soul King, Book King, Painting King, and others. They were not inferior in the slightest. 1,000,000 years ago, in the battle to decide the Heavenly Emperor's throne, even with Master Yun Cheng's personal support, these 4 people still stood out to challenge Yuan Tianji. These people's cultivations were all top-notch. Although they looked dignified on the surface, in reality, every one of them was unruly and lawless. Demon Empress Yao Xian frowned slightly and said lightly, "How dare the 4 of you be so presumptuous in front of me?" Demon Empress's words were equivalent to forcibly taking the blame for herself. However, these 4 people were happy when they heard it. They all thought to themselves, "This Xie Dan Qiong's cultivation is indeed not high. The Demon Empress is actually so nervous that she doesn't hesitate to lower herself and forcibly take action." Divine Frost King Zhuang Shaoqin bowed respectfully and said, "Your Majesty, the Demon Empress is wise. The heavenly emperors of the past have all been through millions of blood pools and tens of thousands of battles. How can Xie Dan Qiong be an exception? Besides, this is the coronation of the heavenly emperor of the Black Cloud Sky. In the end, it is Black Cloud Sky's family affair. Your Majesty, although your cultivation is high and you benefit the world, but if you intervene in our Black Cloud Sky's family affair, it seems that you are overstepping your boundaries. It's not very appropriate." Demon Empress was furious when she heard this. "Are you saying that I don't know my limits?" The Demon Empress was a heavenly emperor. Her words were always the law. No one dared to criticize her face to face. Although Zhuang Xiuqin's words were tactful, he was still saying that the Demon Empress was meddling in other people's business. How could the Demon Empress not be angry? Moreover, the process of the real and fake heavenly emperors was too mysterious. Everyone was deceived. The Demon Empress really thought that the Xie Dan Qiong there was still the real Xie Dan Qiong. Now that she wanted to use this as a pretext to make a fuss, Zhuang Xiaoqin's words gave the Demon Empress an excuse. She had a reason to be angry. Chapter 2401. Although Zhuang Xiaoqin and the rest were already the top experts in the world, they were still nothing in the eyes of the Demon Empress. If they really fought, even if the 4 of them attacked together, they could only contend with the Demon Empress for a while. It was impossible for them to escape the fate of defeat. Both sides were at odds, and the Demon Empress was about to attack Zhuang Xiaoqin and the rest. At this moment, Extreme Heaven Merciless Heavenly Emperor Zui Wuqing stood up and said, "Your Majesty Demon Empress, please calm down for now. The appearance of these 4 people is indeed a little abrupt. However, Zhuang Xiaoqin's statement is also somewhat reasonable. If a heavenly emperor can't deter the world with his true ability, how can he stand side by side with you and me and be known as the emperor and empress? Besides, these 4 people are still from Moyutian. Previously, they participated in the competition for the position of heavenly emperor. It's reasonable for them to ask for the position of heavenly emperor today. Taking 10,000 steps back, this is indeed a family matter of Moyutian." Donghuang Shueleihan at the side sneered and interrupted. "Does this mean that the Extreme Heaven Emperor thinks that this method is reasonable? Speaking of which, I'm originally from the Extreme Heaven. If one day I rush to the Extreme Heaven and kill your entire family, will it only be a family matter of the Extreme Heaven? I don't think you'll blame the Eastern Royal Heaven for it, right?" Longing Huan, the Blazing Sun Celestial Emperor of the Crimson North Immortal Realms, spoke. "Your Majesty Donghuang's words are wrong. There's a suspicion that you are overstating things. Your Majesty Donghuang's origin is no longer important. What's important is that you are now the overlord of the Eastern Royal Immortal Realms. Your every action and action is inseparable from the Eastern Royal Immortal Realms." Shueleihan couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Longing Huan, are you saying that if a person achieves something outside of his hometown, he will no longer be considered as a native of his hometown? What kind of bullshit are you spouting? If you, Longing Huan, Become a dog in my Eastern royal heaven? Are you saying that you're just a dog when you return to your hometown? Longing Huan was furious and said coldly, Shui Leihan, how dare you speak so rudely? Are you really going to go against me no matter what? Shui Leihan raised his head and sneered. Go against you? Are you worthy? What's more, each and every one of you is opposing Mo Yuntian. This emperor just doesn't like the look of it. To think that I'm purposely opposing you. Heavenly Emperor Yen Yang, other than being good at distorting the truth, you're also very good at sticking gold on your face. What's wrong? Are you trying to make use of my Donghuang's reputation to raise your status? He snorted coldly and said, It's a pity that no matter how much you improve, you're still as despicable. Longing Huan was so angry that his hands and feet were trembling. He said furiously, Shui Leihan, in the history of heavenly emperors ascending the throne, which one of them didn't go through all kinds of hardships and dangers? Which one of them hadn't narrowly escaped death? Who else could have ascended the throne so peacefully and smoothly? You're speaking empty words and acting recklessly. What's more, you're being unreasonable by attacking me. What are your intentions? The Celestial Emperor's ascension ceremony is not over yet. It is only natural that someone would challenge the Celestial Emperor's strength. Without sufficient strength, it was difficult for him to accept the masses. How could he become the Celestial Emperor? Longing Huan loudly said, This is a rule that has been around for thousands of years. Who can break it? How can the Jade Flower Great Emperor be an exception? The everlasting Emperor of the Daluo Heaven, Ziwuji, smiled faintly and said, Heavenly Emperor Yen Yang is right. These are indeed the rules of the heavens. But I want to ask these few local challengers of the ink cloud sky. When the heavenly limit was still around, what were the few of you doing? When the Jade Flower Great Emperor was fighting against the extraterrestrial demons, where were you? Who was the one who quelled the extraterrestrial demons? And who was the one who brought the turbulent ink cloud sky back on the right track? Now that all the dangers are over, you jump out to pick the fruits of the labor and accuse the great benefactor of the entire ink cloud sky of not being qualified. Do you think you're right? The South Pole Heavenly Emperor of Ice and Snow, Meng Jing, replied, Brother Z, you're wrong. Back then, Yuan Tianji didn't give himself away. It was only the Jade Flower Great Emperor who had the foresight. When Yuan Tianji exposed his extraterrestrial demon true body, it was also the time when he disappeared. These 4 people weren't nearby. How could they have arrived in time? Not to mention participating in the battle? Brother Z's statement, I'm afraid it's a little nitpicking. Buter Heavenly Emperor Mo Huichin said indifferently, No matter what, it's an indisputable fact that these people didn't participate in the battle against the extraterrestrial demons. At this moment, facing the great benefactor of the entire ink cloud sky, they spoke rudely and rashly challenged him. This point is even more undeniable. Big Western Sky's Mad Sword Heavenly Emperor Wu Yakuang said, Even if these people's actions are more or less in the wrong, but what they're doing now is actually following the past practice of the Heaven Imperial Court. This point can't be overturned in the end. Even that year, His Majesty the Sage Monarch had also specially talked about this kind of matter. The Heaven Imperial Court is originally a world where the strong are respected. If you want to find people with noble morals, there are many great scholars in this world. But those people lack the strength to truss up a chicken. How can they manage one side of the world? Protect the peace of one side? Green Sky Heaven's Wei Heavenly Emperor Mo Qingqing said coldly. According to Brother Wu's meaning, Xia Danqiong, the great benefactor of the entire ink cloud sky, being killed by ink cloud sky on the spot at the most glorious moment of his life is also a matter of course, isn't it? I can only scoff at this kind of statement. I really don't dare to agree. Dee and Empress opened their mouths to speak, and those with discerning eyes could see it. Dee and Empress, this world's highest echelon, finally formed 2 distinct factions at this moment. One faction was led by Dongwang Shui Leihan and Demon Empress Yao Xianer, fully supporting ink cloud sky's Jade Flower Heavenly Emperor. There was also Buter Heavenly Emperor Mo Huichin and Daluo Heavenly Emperor Ziwuji, also obviously standing on Shui Leihan's side. As for the other side, It was led by merciless Heavenly Emperor Zui Wuqing, Flaming Sun Heavenly Emperor Long Yinghuan, Mad Sword Heavenly Emperor Wu Yekwang forming a faction. Whereas South Pole Sky's Ice and Snow Heavenly Emperor Meng Jinghui's stance was a little ambiguous, leaning more towards Heavenly Emperor Wu Qing's side. Green Sky's Heavenly Emperor Mo Qingqing, on the other hand, was slightly leaning towards Shui Leihan's side. But to be fair, these two people's stances were basically still the same, not leaning more towards any side. The two factions were tit for tat. In terms of strength, Shui Leihan and Demon Empress's faction could be said to completely crush the other party, but in terms of background, the other party still had Sage Lord Yun Shangren's support. If this was the case, the two sides could be considered to be evenly matched, roughly on par, and no side could have the absolute upper hand. Among the millions of people below, there was someone who sneered. What's there to debate about? Why don't we just let them go up and fight? The winner will be king, then wouldn't everything be fine? Jade Flower Heavenly Emperor's might is awe-inspiring in the ink cloud sky. It can't be that he doesn't dare to accept my challenge, right? Although this person's voice wasn't loud, it spread throughout the entire place. Obviously, there was someone who was adding fuel to the fire. For a moment, there were people from all directions who started to clamor because of this, saying one after another, "Yes, yes, the strong will be respected, the winner will be king." There were even people who stood out and raised their arms, shouting, "Fight! Fight! Fight! Let me, the Jade Flower Great Emperor, teach these clowns a lesson. The strong will be respected, the winner will be king. The strong will be respected, the winner will be king." I, Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun, have never been afraid of challenges. That's right, if you don't prove your strength, how can you be the ruler of a part of the world? These people were jeering from all directions, and some people who didn't know the truth also started to chime in. In an instant, there was an uproar. Mo Tianji, who was at the side, closed his eyes as if he didn't hear it, but the divine senses that spread out remembered each and every one of these people who started to cause trouble. If one of them dies a good death, I won't be able to continue living anymore. The master of calculation and manipulation was really angry. What Mo Tianji couldn't understand the most was that Xie Dan Qion had clearly saved Mo Yun Tian, and this was something that everyone in Mo Yun Tian, from the elderly to the children, knew. But when someone instigated trouble, these people actually followed blindly without thinking. In fact, they were really interested in watching their savior fight a bloody battle against a strong enemy, even if there was the danger of losing their lives. They weren't worried at all. The deep-rooted bad habits of humans. Mo Tianji's eyes became colder and colder, and there was even a feeling of disgust rising. Zui Wuqing, the Heavenly Emperor of Merciless Heaven, smiled coldly and looked at Shui Leihan without giving in at all. He said lightly, "Before I came here, His Majesty the Sane Monarch had specially instructed, the Imperial Court has laws, and the martial world has limits. The laws can't be abolished, and the speed can't be exceeded. Everything must be done according to the original rules, and no mistakes can be made." Shui Leihan's pupils shrank, and he said indifferently, "You mean, you're using Cloud Master to pressure me?" Heavenly Emperor Wuqing smiled. "I didn't mean that. I'm just repeating His Majesty the Saint Monarch's words. It's just that, whether it's reasonable or not, if Jade Flower Emperor doesn't dare to accept the challenge of these people in front of the heroes of the world, then, even if you become the Heavenly Emperor in the end, what's the point? What dignity is there left?" Zui Wuqing's words really hit the nail on the head. Yes, whether it was right or not, whether it was reasonable or not, but Xie Dan Qion was indeed in a difficult position now. In front of tens of millions of people, if they were to cower in fear and avoid battle, all of their dignity and face would be gone. Now that things had come to this, no matter how they argued, this battle was destined to be unavoidable. At this moment, Jade Flower Emperor, who was standing in front of the first step, slowly turned around. His handsome face was full of seriousness, and he said in a deep voice, "It's indeed useless to say more. Since I want to ascend to that position, there are some challenges that I have to face. If you want to fight, I'll fight. However, Swords have no eyes. If you die in my hands because of this, don't regret it. People have to pay the price for their own actions. The path of life and death is nothing more than one in front and one behind. Take a step forward, and there's a mountain of swords and a sea of fire. Take a step back, and there's a vast sea and sky. This Jade Flower Emperor said coldly. Challengers, you'd better be prepared to die first. In this sentence, the murderous intent was already naked and no longer concealed. It showed that once they started fighting, it would be a situation where they would fight to the death. There was no such thing as a competition between the strong and the weak. There was only life and death. Chapter 2402. He was dead drunk yesterday, but very happy. His friends came to congratulate him on moving to a new place. The drinking session was simply heartwarming. 42 people. After excluding the women and children, there were 33 people left. 33 men finished 25 bottles of white wine. Cough, 40% white wine. They all collapsed. Excerpt a few excerpts for everyone. Excerpt of the phone call after they arrived at the hotel. Captain, damn it, why aren't you here yet? Did you die on the way? Comrade, damn it, I'm running, who the hell are you? Captain, damn you. Comrade, then damn you? Captain, I'm your second uncle. Comrade, second uncle is also an uncle. Who the hell are you? Captain, why do you care who I am? Damn it, it's not even 3 minutes. Comrade, damn it, wait, we're here. That table, at the beginning. One guy said, I have fatty liver, I can't drink. Another immediately showed his medical record. Look, I have heart disease, I'll drink. Fatty liver is nothing. Another said, I drove here. Immediately, everyone at the table jeered. Damn it, you think we can't afford a car? Another guy said, I didn't drink at my wedding, I can't drink. Everyone at the table shouted. You don't need to drink at your wedding, you just need to do something else. Immediately, someone joked. Do what else? A comrade secretly got married during a vacation without informing anyone. He came today and suffered a lot. One guy said, Damn it, the groom is here. Who the hell is this? He looks like a dog. Another said, Damn it, you don't even know the groom. Didn't you drink at the wedding? This guy continued, Whoever drinks at the wedding is a bastard. Everyone at the table jeered. Who? Who went to the wedding? Damn it, come out and let us see this bastard. So everyone shook their heads. He didn't go. Then they all fired. Damn it, he didn't invite us to the wedding? Then everyone began to ask. What does the bride look like? Is she fair? Is she fat? Does she feel good? Is she good? Damn it, can you be more specific with your words? Is she good? Call them over and strip them naked so that we can check them out. In the end, the bridegroom kept bowing and begging, but was not forgiven. He had no choice but to drink a bottle of wine as an apology. He collapsed before the banquet even started. That comrade in Jinan, the one who lent me money to buy a house, was attacked as soon as he arrived. Everyone at the table was from Lai Wu. He was the only one from Jinan. Therefore, everyone roared together. Let's kill this Jinan man first. After 2 rounds, this guy collapsed under the table. This morning, I was sleeping when a friend called me. Bro, I remember that you moved yesterday. Did I go? I was confused on the spot. This brat got drunk last night and did a lot of goose-stepping in the hotel. She actually doesn't remember anything, so I said. You didn't come. He apologized profusely. Brother, I'm really sorry. I drank too much last night and couldn't make it. I'll make it up to you in the afternoon. Haha, this feels so good. The word count is limited, and it's almost 1,000 words. Stop. Also, just to make it clear, soldiers are like this when they're together. Full of vulgarities. If you don't like it, you can ignore it. Please forgive me. Chapter 2403. The 4 of them laughed at the same time. Qianghua is really bold. However, we have been roaming the world for millions of years and have already seen through life and death. It would be a real pity if we accidentally hurt Brother Xie. They didn't address Xie Danqiong as Emperor Qianghua but called him Brother Xie. Obviously, they didn't acknowledge Xie Danqiong's identity and status as the Heaven Emperor. Xie Danqiong's eyes flashed with murderous intent. With his hands behind his back, he said calmly, "Don't regret your words." Zui Wuqing, the Heavenly Emperor Wuqing said at the right time. "Before I came, His Majesty had solemnly instructed that although Chu Wuliang and the others' feelings were understandable, their actions were a little extreme. However, it's fine for everyone to compete, but we mustn't damage the harmony between us, and we mustn't fight to the death either. After all, the heavenly demons are running rampant now, and their desire to destroy the heavenly imperial court has yet to die. We have to conserve every bit of our combat strength, and be prepared to fight the heavenly demons at any time, and quell the heavenly demon threat." Long Yinghuan said emotionally. "His Majesty is really far-sighted and far-sighted. It's so touching." Dongwang Shui Leihan sneered and said sarcastically, "Far-sighted? Far-sighted? Why didn't I see it? Although everyone can say beautiful words, just based on someone's pretentiousness, it really makes my teeth ache. I've only heard these 2 sentences, and it's already enough to make me lose my appetite. I'm really fucking unlucky. Why did I forget to look at the almanac when I went out today? Especially when I'm dealing with trash like you, how can I forget to look at the almanac? This is this emperor's mistake," Zui Wuqing said coldly. "Shui Leihan, are you looking down on His Majesty's decision? Or are you questioning His Majesty's decision? Or are you objecting to His Majesty's decision?" Demon Empress Yao Xiner said coldly. "Look down? Decision? What's there to talk about? Since when did he look up to him? Besides, it's not just His Majesty the Dongwang who feels this way. Even this Empress has lost her appetite after hearing this. Speaking of which, this Empress has looked at the almanac today. Although everything is going well today, with Yuri's promotion, this Empress has to be wary of villains. However, villains are hard to find, but fake emperors are everywhere. However, only a fake emperor in the world who can do this can truly reach the peak and succeed in everything. For example, His Majesty the Sage Monarch is like this." Zui Wuqing's pupils contracted. "Your Majesty, your words are like the wind. It's too late for regrets. There are some words that you have to bear with the consequences." Yao Xiner sneered. "Consequences? What consequences? Is there anything in this Heaven Imperial Court that I, Yao Xiner, cannot bear?" she said coldly. "From what you said earlier, I can hear another layer of meaning. The Saint Lord actually knew beforehand that someone would come to challenge him, and even miraculously knew who the challenger was. Such a prophetic ability is indeed not something my generation can match. Since young, I admit that I am not as good as him. It's just that as the ruler of the imperial court, not only did he not take the initiative to calm things down, he even added fuel to the fire from behind. In such a situation where it is impossible to get off the tiger, he actually said that the bigger picture is more important. What big picture? Did he see the big picture? It's simply laughable to the extreme," Dongwang Shui Leihan said mockingly. "As the saying goes, one has to erect a chastity memorial arch after committing adultery. Isn't it referring to this bastard?" After a pause, she added another word. "Egg." He originally just wanted to say bastard, but then he remembered that his sister was the Saint Lord's wife. Saying that the Saint Lord was a bastard was equivalent to saying that his sister was having an affair. He felt that it was inappropriate, so he added the word egg. Heavenly Emperor Wuqing's face swelled. He knew that he had said something wrong, but he was speechless for a long time. At such a time, any explanation would be useless. At this moment, Chu Wuliang had already turned into a long rainbow. He took the lead and rushed up to the sky. Standing in the void, he turned into a golden figure that was emitting brilliant golden light. He said sternly, "Xie Danqiong, come up. In front of the heroes of the world, show the means that you have to become the heavenly emperor of Ink Cloud." Xie Danqiong floated up slowly. His figure was tall and straight, and his clothes were fluttering. He flew up to the sky and stood in front of Chu Wuliang. He said indifferently, "Chu Wuliang, you have also lived for a long time. You should know that the so-called life and death are sometimes really simple. If you are alive, you can continue to enjoy life and continue to command the world. But if you die, then no matter what you were called when you were alive, you will only have one name after death, and that is corpse." The next moment, Xie Danqiong continued very seriously, "I sincerely hope that you can consider carefully." Chu Wuliang laughed strangely and said, "Does Jade Flower Great Emperor mean that you will kill me? Do you have the confidence to kill me?" These words were obviously meant to provoke him. Xie Danqiong had a sincere look of pity on his face. He didn't evade and said softly, "Killing you is like killing a chicken. It's not worth mentioning at all." Chu Wuliang was so angry that he laughed and said, "In that case, Brother Xie, please take the trouble to send me off." As he spoke, this great deer mountain king already held his sword in his hand. The long sword flashed in the air, and a sword light suddenly shot out. It was as round as a pillar, and as long as 1,000 feet. This sword aura was extremely magnificent. It didn't slash at Xie Danqiong, but at the void. Everyone who saw this scene was dazzled. It was really a show of strength to gain the upper hand. Xie Danqiong stood with his hands clasped behind his back. There was still a faint smile on his face, and his expression didn't change. It was as if he didn't see that shocking sword. "Xie Danqiong, you said it yourself? You can't complain when you send me off in the netherworld." Chu Wuliang obviously knew the importance of this great Emperor Qianghua in Mo Yintian. He confirmed it again in front of everyone, so as not to arouse public anger. However, his action also exposed his killing intent. It was obvious that he had made up his mind not to let Xie Danqiong live. Xie Danqiong was still calm. He said softly, "Come on. Don't miss the time." Chu Wuliang let out a long and loud cry. His voice shook the entire area. Everyone's heart tightened. They saw an even more splendid and magnificent light rise from his hand. Then, he brandished his sword, and it turned into a gigantic tiger. Its entire body was gorgeous and resplendent. Then, it pounced towards Xie Danqiong. Tiger-killing sword! The knowledgeable people were all shocked. This sword was driven by pure spiritual energy. It condensed all the energy into essence. Once the sword was launched, it had the power of a tiger king that could swallow the sky and the earth. It was said that a tiger king could swallow the sky and the earth. Ordinary tiger kings of the demon clans didn't have the qualification to be crowned as kings if they couldn't reach such a level. Chu Wuliang's sword was to kill the enemy. Secondly, it was to intimidate the crowd. Thirdly, it was to show his strength. In other words, he had reached the qualification to be a king. He was qualified to be the Heaven Emperor. This was the meaning behind it. That giant tiger, which was 1,000 feet tall, shook its head and wagged its tail. Countless sword lights came roaring from it. Xie Danqiong had already changed his appearance, and reappeared beside Chu Yang. But his complexion changed in an instant. I would have made a fool of myself on the spot if I had been the one on the stage. Even if I don't lose in one move, it's only a matter of time. This was the difference in the level of one's foundation. It had nothing to do with talent or hard work. There was no way around it. However, Xie Danqiong was still standing in the sky like a mountain. His upper body didn't move, and his lower body didn't move. He didn't dodge at all. There was still a confident smile on his face. He turned his wrist, and a white viburnum flower appeared in his hand. He slowly recited, "Viburnum flowers bloom, hundreds of flowers wither. Dark clouds compete in the sky." With a long cry, the pure and holy jasper flower spun and flew out. The moment it left his finger, it was clearly just a jasper flower, but as it left his finger, it quickly split into 2, then 4, then 8. In the blink of an eye, the entire sky was filled with jasper flowers, dazzling everyone's eyes. At this moment, countless beautiful flowers bloomed in the sky at the same time. It was really beautiful. Everyone was dazzled at this moment. They almost lost their minds in the face of such a magnificent scene. The sea of viburnum flowers blotted out the sky and the sun. Naturally, they also drowned the giant tiger at the same time. New viburnum flowers bloomed continuously. Layer by layer, they seemed to be blooming continuously until the end of the world, and they seemed to be blooming in everyone's heart. However, this boundless beauty also contained boundless murderous intent. Everyone realized at this moment that when the viburnum flowers bloomed to the peak, it was time for the murderous intent to appear. The viburnum flower emperor didn't hide her murderous intent at all. Even in the face of St. June's warning, she still insisted on doing it. It was a sure kill situation. In the sky, the viburnum flower emperor's long recitation continued. Blooming for a lifetime, no one knows. Today, I've reached the peak. Xiadanqiong was also dazzled by the scene in front of him. He sighed and said, The viburnum flowers can bloom to such an extent. This is really a realm that I've never dreamed of. This life has an end, and the future is endless. It turns out that my previous path is so wonderful. The next moment, an extremely shrill scream came out. In the sky, the great deer mountain king Chu Wuliang turned into a long rainbow and flew out quickly. However, no matter how hard he tried to dodge in the sky, he couldn't escape the pursuit of the viburnum flowers. The tiger-slaying sword had already been broken into pieces. Facing such a shocking move, the great deer mountain king Chu Wuliang was scared out of his wits and tried to escape. However, the sea of viburnum flowers filled every inch of space that he could escape from. He had never dreamed that the viburnum flower emperor, who was reported to be only at the level of a saint, could unleash such a powerful force that could kill him. The long rainbow was blocked by the rolling viburnum flowers. It dashed left and right and gradually scattered. However, the viburnum flowers were still blooming. They were still boundless and omnipresent. Finally, the viburnum flower emperor chuckled and said indifferently, You didn't show up to kill the demon, but now you're quite active in the fight for fame and fortune. What's the point of keeping such a person alive? Just watch me kill him, to eliminate the internal conflict. Suddenly, the world became clear and empty. Something unexpected happened today. In the afternoon, I received a call and got off the plane with the people from the game company in Jinan. I hurriedly picked up my brothers and asked them to have dinner together. When they arrived at the hotel, it was already 10:30 p.m. I came back to write quickly, I'm sorry for the late update. I'm even more sorry for only updating one chapter. But please believe me. I'm really exhausted. I don't know if you can understand. Chapter 2404. In the sky. The hundreds of millions of blooming viburnum flowers in the sky suddenly disappeared. Only a soulless figure was left in the sky. Chu Wuliang was standing in the sky, covered in blood. His face was a deathly gray. There was no vitality in his eyes. That arrogant and domineering face was now filled with despair. There was no resentment. The jade flower great emperor in the sky smiled with pity and said, The road to hell is long. Forgive me for not seeing you off. Chu Wuliang, you should be prepared to die. I won't burn incense for you on this day next year. The jade flower great emperor said softly. Because you don't deserve it. As the words you don't deserve it were spoken, Chu Wuliang's body suddenly exploded into pieces of flesh, like a blooming viburnum flower in the sky. It bloomed from head to toe, every inch of his body. This cruel scene appeared in the shape of a blooming viburnum flower, which gave people a cruel and beautiful visual impression. The viburnum flower gradually bloomed to Chu Wuliang's feet. Finally, it all disappeared with a pop sound. He had completely died in this world. A master of a generation, an all-powerful master for 1,000,000 years, finally came to an end today. Then, the Xiadanqiong in the sky suddenly raised his head and made a soft sound of surprise. He reached out his hand and seemed to have caught something. He said calmly, There is such a thing? He put some strength into his hand. With a pop sound, a wisp of faint green smoke spread out from his hand. He clapped his hands and took out a snow-white silk handkerchief embroidered with viburnum flowers. He wiped his hands carefully, and then threw it away. The snow-white silk handkerchief spun. It flew straight up into the sky and didn't fall down. No one knew where it flew to. It only flew to a white cloud and then disappeared quietly. The whole place fell into a dead silence again. Even the descendants of Di were speechless because of the shock. Who would have thought that this unknown great Emperor Jasper Flower would actually be so powerful? The famous Deer Mountain King, the top master of Emoyuntian. He was defeated by one move of the Jade Flower Great Emperor. He was turned into nothingness. Now that he thought about it, he was just like a clown when he used the rainbow and killed the tiger with his majestic appearance. Look at the Jasper Flower Empress. She just stood there without moving, and with a casual toss of her hand, countless jasper flowers filled the sky. It transformed into a sea of jasper flowers that drowned the heavens and the earth, drowned the heavens, and drowned everything it wanted to drown. What did this mean? What did this mean? No matter how you jump around like a clown, this emperor only needs to wave his hand or flick his finger to turn you into ashes. Drown, annihilate. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and tricks were useless. It was all just a dream. She thought she was infallible and was willing to do it. Only disillusionment was the fastest. Heavenly Emperor Merciless Zui Wuching, Heavenly Emperor Blazing Sun, Heavenly Emperor Longing Huan, Heavenly Emperor Maniac Sword, Heavenly Emperor Wu Yekwang, and the others' expressions changed drastically. Because, even if they were facing Chu Wuliang, they wouldn't be able to defeat him. Of course, it was possible to kill him without much effort, and it would not take more than 3 moves. However, it was still impossible for him to do it so effortlessly. He could annihilate the enemy without the slightest trace of smoke or aura. As the saying goes, killing the enemy with a wave of one's hand while laughing. Actually, from the moment the flowers were everywhere in the sky, the demon Empress Yao Xianer had already been relieved. Although the initial attack and the series of moves that followed were the signature moves of the Jasper Flower Empress, the Demon Empress knew that the Jasper Flower Empress obviously didn't have such a standard. She was far from reaching such a realm. A peerless expert could see through the details. Especially when Yao Xianer knew about a possible mystery, she naturally knew. The one who attacked just now must be Dongwang Shueleihan. In fact, the Demon Empress herself admitted that even if she attacked personally, she might not be able to do it better. Dongwang Shueleihan was indeed the most powerful person after Di. There was another meaning. The substitution was successful. Just when did the switch happen? You even managed to fool this Empress. Yao Xianer exclaimed in surprise, but she also heaved a sigh of relief. A relaxed smile appeared on her face. At this point, the outcome was already decided. With Shueleihan here, as long as a saint didn't attack, no one could force Shueleihan's real body out. However, even if a saint didn't care about his identity and attacked personally, with Shueleihan's strength, he could still make a mess. Even if Shueleihan couldn't win in the end, she still had her. Anyway, in the Demon Empress' heart, today's situation was already decided. As for the other heavenly emperors, everyone's expression was very similar. Everyone was dumbfounded, stunned, and dumbfounded. It was really like seeing a ghost. The Jasper Flower Empress actually had such a cultivation level that she could kill Chu Wuliang so easily and happily? This unexpected result made everyone stare with their eyes wide open. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Especially the extreme heaven merciless Heavenly Emperor Zui Wuching and the Qibei Heavenly Emperor Yan Yang Longinghuan. As for the other opponent, the Maniac Sword Heavenly Emperor Wu Yekwang's face also showed an extremely complicated expression, but it was only for a moment. Just this bearing alone was enough to make his evaluation surpass Zui Wuching and Longinghuan. In the sky, the Jasper Flower Empress's white robes fluttered. Her eyes were warm and peaceful. She said lightly, "I wonder when the other challengers will fight with me? However, in my opinion, there are only 3 of you left. Why don't you all come up together?" These words seemed to be said casually, but the domineering aura that leaked out was completely revealed. The Frost God King Zhuang Xiaochun, the Golden Blade Heavenly King Su Yunqing, and the Sky-Flipping Spear King Nie Qianlong, the three experts looked at each other. Their faces were filled with sincere apprehension and surprise. There was also an unconcealable fear. When it came to the Great Deer Mountain King Chu Wuliang's cultivation level, no one knew it better than the three of them. If it was a battle of life and death, none of the three dared to say that they could definitely win against the Great Deer Mountain King. But now, the Great Deer Mountain King Chu Wuliang, this top expert who could share the limelight with him, actually died in the hands of the Jasper Flower Empress without a sound. If it was a one-on-one battle, who would dare to go up? Not only was that purely seeking death, but it was also the most thorough death. The three's desire to challenge was instantly extinguished. However, how were they to deal with that order? For a moment, the three were in a dilemma. At this moment, the Jasper Flower Empress, dressed in snow-white robes, stood proudly in the sky. Her figure was tall and straight, and her face was elegant and calm. At this moment, who knew how many girls in the black cloud sky had fallen head over heels for her? In this lifetime, when they dreamed about it, they would probably be accompanied by that elegant figure standing in the sky. So many years later, today's scene would still be imprinted in the hearts of everyone who participated in the ceremony. Everyone thought that no heavenly emperor's elegance could overshadow the Jasper Flower Empress today. Including the sage. Including the Eastern Sovereign. No one knew that the current Jasper Flower Empress was His Majesty the Eastern Sovereign, completely unleashing his killing intent. However, the unique elegance of the Jasper Flower Empress turned into endless charm. Endless scenery. Seeing that the three of them didn't say anything for a long time, the Jasper Flower Empress revealed a contemptuous smile. She said, "What are you waiting for? Come up. Didn't you want to snatch the position of Heavenly Emperor? If you don't even have the courage to come up and fight." The Jasper Flower Empress smiled faintly. "Don't tell me that these few cowards all have the extravagant hopes of becoming the Heavenly Emperor of the Black Cloud Sky." This sentence was as sharp as a talisman that hastened his death. All the people of the Black Cloud Sky were shocked. That's right. These few people were said to be peerless experts, and they did look like experts. But so what? What qualifications did they have to compete for the position of Heavenly Emperor of the Black Cloud Sky? They didn't show up during the demon-slaying war. When everything was settled, they came out to cause trouble. They were delusional. And now, facing the unfathomable and powerful Jasper Flower Empress, they didn't dare to make a move. What qualifications did they have to be the Heavenly Emperor of the Black Cloud Sky? What qualifications did they have to compete for the position of Heavenly Emperor of the Black Cloud Sky? If one of these people really became the Heavenly Emperor of the Black Cloud Sky, what hope did the Black Cloud Sky have? They would be reduced to citizens of a third-class world. For a time, all was silent, and the crowd was speechless. However, an unprecedentedly dense air of doubt filled the air. Pairs of doubtful eyes were fixed on Zhuang Xiaochun and the other two. Zhuang Xiaochun and the other two sighed in their hearts. Was the mission this time to completely eliminate the forces of the Black Cloud Sky? But based on the current situation, the cultivation of the Black Cloud Sky's Jasper Flower Empress was far beyond the intelligence report. But now, they were already in a situation where it was hard to get off. Even if they fled for their lives and were lucky enough to escape for a while, they would still face the endless joint pursuit of Dee and the others. You can die in battle, you can be defeated. Even if you commit suicide on the spot, it will be considered an end. Because you came for the family matters of the Black Cloud Sky. But if you provoke them first and run away once you know you are no match for them, it would prove that you are purely here to cause trouble. Since that is the case, it is equivalent to offending the dignity of Dee and Empress. You must pay the price. The price of your life. Facing such a pursuit, there was absolutely no chance of survival. The three of them were in the same dilemma, and it was difficult to choose. At this moment, the Demon Empress' cold voice sounded. "Since the three of you are here for the position of Heavenly Emperor, why don't you fight? Below, Dongwang Shui Leihan also said coldly. Why don't you fight? Green Firmament Heavenly Emperor Mo Qingqing said coldly. The jasper flower has already bloomed, why don't you fight? Exalted Heavenly Emperor Ziwuji raised his head and looked at the three with cold eyes. He said indifferently, Why don't you three fight? Could it be that the so-called challenge is not real, and you are deliberately provoking us? As soon as these words came out, all the Heavenly Emperors snorted heavily in unison. Although Zui Wuqing and the others didn't want to snort like this represented the dignity of DE and Empress. Chapter 2405. Under the watchful eyes of millions of people, Su Yunqing and Ye Qianlong's bodies gradually disappeared. From their lower body to their upper body, they slowly disappeared. One could clearly see the heartfelt shock on their faces. And regret. But during this process, they didn't say a single word. Everyone who knew the strength of these two people couldn't help but shiver. The Jade Flower Great Empress waved her hand in the air, and then rubbed her hands together. It was unknown what she rubbed, but a wave of ripples appeared in the air. Below, everyone was silent, including the peerless experts of this generation like DE and Empress. Especially the extreme heaven merciless Heavenly Emperor Zui Wuqing, who had always been against the Jade Flower Great Empress, and the Qi Bei Heaven Emperor Yanyanglong Yinghuan, both felt a chill run down their spines. Because the two Heavenly Emperors suddenly realized that the Jade Flower Great Empress had been hiding her strength all this time, but her actual cultivation had obviously surpassed the two of them. In fact, it had surpassed them by quite a bit. Just from this battle alone, the shocking strength displayed by the Jade Flower Great Empress was almost on par with the East Emperor and the Demon Empress. Such a monstrous figure had actually appeared in the world. Under the watchful eyes of countless people, the Jasper Flower Emperor calmly and effortlessly annihilated the four extraordinarily powerful king-level enemies in an instant, in a manner that had already reached the pinnacle of beauty. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, four extraordinarily active and even arrogant lives disappeared just like that. However, it didn't give people a feeling of cruelty at all. Instead, it was filled with melancholy towards life and death. Not only was there no fear, but it was also filled with inexplicable melancholy. And in this melancholy mood, the Jade Flower Great Empress stood with her hands behind her back, looking at the people and the world with a compassionate expression. Such a peerless and transcendent demeanor had instantly caused a tsunami of cheers from all the people of Dark Cloud Sky. Jade Flower Great Empress! Jade Flower Great Empress! Dark Cloud Jade Flower is unparalleled in the world! In the midst of the tsunami of cheers, the Jade Flower Great Empress still had a faint smile on her face, facing the world calmly. It was as if everything that had happened before was not a test at all. Instead, it was just an insignificant trick to impress everyone. That was all there was to it, not worth mentioning. The Master of Ceremonies, Mo Yuntian's Grand Elder Mu Tsanglan, was also extremely shocked. In his heart, he was well aware of Xie Danqiong's level of strength. It was impossible for him to have such strength. Otherwise, why would he have needed to expend so much effort when he fought against Yuan Tianming? Mu Tsanglan knew every single one of the four people who had appeared just now. They were all peerless experts with standard king-level strength. Although they couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as Zhu Yuantian, they were already on the same level as a 7-star guard and weren't inferior in the slightest. However, such super powerhouses were like clay chickens and pottery dogs in front of the current Xie Danqiong. They couldn't withstand a single blow, and could be destroyed with a flick of his finger. What kind of valiant strength was this? Such a glorious and invincible image appeared in this coronation ceremony. It was simply to match the birth of a super idol. Moreover, it was the highest ruler of Mo Yuntian. It could definitely sweep away the haze of Mo Yuntian being ruled by the heavenly demons. How could Mu Tsanglan not be excited? This excitement had even made him ignore the big question of why Xie Danqiong had such a powerful cultivation. Because, to the current situation, it wasn't important. Naturally, he didn't know that the Jade Flower Great Emperor in front of him wasn't Xie Danqiong himself. but the world-famous Dongwang Shuelehan. He also didn't know that in order to completely establish the name of the Jade Flower Great Emperor, Dongwang Shuelehan had used almost all of his strength in those few moves just now. On one side they thought that they were just facing a young Jade Flower Great Emperor and were looking down on him. On the other side, it was actually Dongwang Shuelehan who was much stronger than the other party in terms of cultivation. Looking at the entire Heaven Imperial Court, other than the only saint, Dongwang Shuelehan was invincible in this world. He hadn't really fought for tens of thousands of years. Now that he was showing off his skills, who in the world could withstand it? This battle was destined to be a one-sided trampling right from the start. Even though they finally realized that the cultivation of the Jade Flower Great Emperor wasn't something that they could go against, and even vaguely realized who the person opposite them was, it was already too late. Whether it was his aura or his battle strength, they had been weakened by more than one level. Even revealing the person's true identity was an extravagant hope. "Jade Flower Great Emperor, please ascend to the throne." Mu Tsunglan's voice was trembling. It wasn't because of fear, but because of excitement from the bottom of his heart. Everyone believed that this time, there would definitely be no more unforeseen events. Even if there were some ignorant provocations, what was it in front of the Jade Flower Great Emperor? They were just clowns. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. "Wait a minute. Wait a minute?" This voice was very light, and the volume didn't seem to be very high. However, everyone heard it clearly. Moreover, with the appearance of these three words, everyone suddenly had a subtle feeling in their hearts that they should indeed wait for a while. This was a powerful mental bewitchment. In an instant, he had only used 3 simple words, but it had already had a considerable impact on millions of people. How terrifyingly strong was this person's mental strength. In the sky, the Jade Flower Great Emperor tilted his head slightly and stared at the clouds. An inexplicable solemnity finally appeared on his calm face. A gentle voice said, "The ascension of the Jade Flower Great Emperor is a grand occasion. I should congratulate him no matter what." Along with this gentle and intoxicating voice, a spotless snow-white figure appeared in the sky. It seemed both real and illusory, but it was also hard to grasp. The newcomer was tall and handsome, and his temperament was extraordinary. He stood in the sky like this, but it was as if he was taking a stroll in the bamboo forest. He was filled with a sense of leisure. His eyes didn't have any sharpness. Instead, they were filled with friendliness and gentleness. It made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. This person didn't look old, but he gave people the feeling that he had existed in this world for hundreds of millions of years. Moreover, this person's figure was filled with an illusory and unreal feeling. It was as if he didn't belong to this world. His eyes looked gently at the Jade Flower Great Emperor in the sky, as if they didn't contain any hostility at all. He smiled and said, "Brother Xie, I would like to ask for your advice." "May I?" From top to bottom, including Dee and Empress, everyone was stunned when they heard this. This was because the appearance of this person had undoubtedly displayed an incomparably powerful and shocking cultivation. However, no one knew who this person was. No one had ever seen him before. Even in the rumors, there had never been such a person. But how could such an outstanding person be so unknown? No, there was one more person who knew who this person was. Shuelehan. Shuelehan knew who this person was. Looking at this person who suddenly appeared, Shuelehan's eyes flashed. Then, he regained his usual gentleness and said in a gentle voice, "You're brilliant. I'm afraid I'm not your opponent." That person laughed and said in an extremely confident manner, "Brother Xie, you're too humble. In the entire Heaven Imperial Court, how many people dare to say that they can take that move just now? I'm just excited to see you and want to ask for your advice. Brother Xie, please show mercy." Shuelehan smiled with a slightly helpless expression. He tilted his head slightly and said, "I'm afraid the one who should show mercy is me." The moment he tilted his head, a deep pain flashed across Shuelehan's deep eyes. That trace of extremely deep hatred was firmly concealed. This person in front of him might be able to hide from everyone in the world, but he couldn't hide from Shuai-Lei-Han. Cloud Lord. The person in front of him was the publicly acknowledged #1 person in Heaven Imperial Court, Cloud Lord. Shuai-Lei-Han had fought with Cloud Lord more than thousands of times in his life. No one knew better than Shuai-Lei-Han about the means that Cloud Lord had. Therefore, although Cloud Lord's appearance had completely changed and was no longer his original appearance, Shuai-Lei-Han still recognized him at a glance. This was the appearance that Cloud Lord had once used. Back then, it was this appearance that caused a great battle with Shuai-Lei-Han and Zihao. In the end, all three of them were defeated and injured. That battle was extremely tragic, and Shuai-Lei-Han almost lost his life because of it. How could Shuai-Lei-Han forget this hateful face after such an unforgettable experience? Even though it had been hundreds of thousands of years since then, it was still vivid in Shuai-Lei-Han's mind and engraved in his heart. Or it should be said that this figure wasn't the real Cloud Lord. It was just a clone projection of Cloud Lord the Saint. Although this clone projection was a powerful clone whose strength had reached the level of Emperor 1, it was still an illusion. However, this was only an illusory image. The real Cloud Lord was probably still hundreds of thousands of miles away. Even so, this figure still appeared to be real here. There wasn't even any part of it that was illusory. Shuai-Lei-Han didn't know what he was feeling. He took a deep breath and exhaled gently from his mouth and nose. Right now, I actually have the upper hand. I've already recognized the other party's true identity. It's the projection of Venerable Cloud's clone. Venerable Cloud must have thought that the attack he was confident in was nothing but a joke, so he couldn't help but make a move himself. This also showed Master Cloud's misgivings towards this new heavenly emperor of Ink Cloud. No matter what, he wouldn't allow Xie Danqiong to truly ascend to the throne as the heavenly emperor of Ink Cloud. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to take the risk of offending the whole world. Shuai-Lei-Han sighed in his heart. Even if you have this intention, it's a pity that man proposes but God disposes. Even if your clone takes action personally, it's already impossible to stop it. Because you don't know who exactly you're facing. Writing is a bit messy. I'll take a day off tomorrow to organize my thoughts. Chapter 2406. It was very difficult. This afternoon, I used my fastest speed to read through the parts of the world-defying stage Heavenly Imperial Court. Writing up to this point, it was indeed a step at a time. In other words, this chapter was a process of challenging myself. Finally, it was coming to an end. No matter how reluctant I was, I still had the obligation to write a perfect ending for the heaven-defying palace. Perhaps after writing it out, many people would say, it's a lousy ending. But, as long as I feel anger from the bottom of my heart when others say the words lousy ending, I will feel at ease and not feel guilty, then, I will have done my best. So, by then, I'll have a clear conscience. But I have to admit that the end was the hardest to write. To be honest, I know what you want to see. For me, I can set it to fight all the way from now on. This kind of plot is the easiest to write. I just need to set new opponents and keep on winning. Although it's easy to write like this, I don't want to. The hardest to write is precisely those water chapters that you think are the transitional chapters. Such chapters need to be written, laid out, and transitioned. But I'll try my best to make these chapters as interesting as possible. This is the only way I can let you feel a trace of joy when the plot is dull. My ideal is, when the plot is tense, everyone will be tense. When the important plot is over, those dull moments can make you laugh. This may be where my value lies. After thinking for a long time, the next part of the story, from the beginning to the end, was the most difficult part to write. The holes in the front must be filled, and the lines at the back must be written well. And I alone need to straighten out these 7 million words in my heart. Let the past be covered in dust, let the future be smooth, and let the holes that have not been filled play their role. Then, calmly, let our heaven-defying palace reach its glory in another world. Tomorrow, I'll rest for a day, and the day after tomorrow, I'll write the final plot of the heaven-defying palace with all my might. I'll try my best to keep updating, but if there's a jam, I'll ask for leave. During this period of leave, even if I'm a deity, I won't be able to make up for it. Because this is the most tiring time. So, everyone can calculate, in the next book, I'll make up for it all. But I can guarantee one thing, I won't owe too much. The enmity between Shui Lei Han and the Saint, as well as Di and Empress, would be the highlight of the Heaven Imperial Court. It would also be the last enmity between the proud world and Shui Lei Han. It needed to be resolved by Chu Yang. Therefore, after Mo Yuntian's ascension to the throne, I'm afraid that you will never be able to guess the plot before you see it. Let me get ready. It wasn't easy for him to get to where he was now, so he had to cherish it. When you scold me, please be gentler. In the middle of the night, I sat in front of the window, quietly thinking about the plot of Proud World. I sighed deeply. It was really difficult. This is the most tiring book I have ever written. I will never write about someone as tiring as Chu Yang. This is the oath I made when I was halfway through writing Proud World. Because he was tired, I was even more tired. Chapter 2407. Yes, although this clone projection was extremely powerful, it didn't have the Saint's ability to see through everything. He naturally didn't know that the person he was facing now wasn't the real Xia Danqiong but Dongwang Shui Lei Han. If he knew, he wouldn't have appeared so hastily today. Since he appeared now, it was equivalent to creating a chance for him to destroy the Saint's clone. This was simply a heaven-sent opportunity that had been delivered right to his doorstep. The best part was that he didn't reveal his true identity. It was only right and proper to kill him here. Shui Lei Han's true battle intent that had been dormant for hundreds of thousands of years burned fiercely for the first time after Zi Hao's death. He could even feel his blood flowing like a river in his veins, surging violently. But his face was still calm and confident, gentle, sincere, and polite. He allowed the killing intent in his heart to hit the shore like raging waves, but on the surface, he flicked his sleeves and said indifferently, "If so, please make your move." With a flash of light, the beautiful viburnum flower appeared at his fingertips again, shining with a dreamlike blur. Dong Wang instantly retracted all the divine consciousness and aura that was exposed outside. Even the part that was originally hidden as a foreshadowing was also retracted, all of it returning to the depths of his dantian. Facing this very powerful enemy, although Dong Wang wasn't afraid and even wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be good if he accidentally let the other party discover that he wasn't Xia Danqiong. Even though Dong Wang was confident that he could kill the person in front of him, the biggest prerequisite was to not leave any hidden dangers. Once there was a mistake, it would definitely be a major hidden danger for the future. There was only one thing that was beyond doubt, and that was that this battle was inevitable. Shui Lei Han definitely wouldn't let this guy who didn't know the truth go. Killing Venerable Cloud's clone of Venerable Cloud's divine sense was beneficial to all parties involved. The eyes of the person in white flashed, looking calm and confident. He looked at Shui Lei Han indifferently and said with a smile, "Looks like Brother Xia's battle intent is quite high. Just the courage to fight with me is already commendable." Shui Lei Han said indifferently, "Your strength is astonishing. How would I dare to not go all out?" Shui Lei Han took a deep breath, his gaze focused. "Although I've just arrived at the Heavenly Imperial Territory not long ago, I'm still confident that I've heard of most of the top experts in the Heavenly Imperial Territory. However, I didn't know that there was such an outstanding figure like you in the Heavenly Imperial Territory. May I know your name?" In fact, this was also the question that everyone wanted to ask. Judging from the aura of such a powerful person, he had at least reached the same realm as Di and the others. However, they had never heard of such a person before. This was, without a doubt, a miraculous event. Although Shui Lei Han already knew the other party's true identity, he still had to ask this question, because the other party thought that he didn't know. Because the current him was not Dongwang Shui Lei Han, but the Jade Flower Emperor, Xia Danqiong. "What is your name?" "You can call me Mr. Wu." The white-robed man had a carefree expression. "Mr. Fogg?" Lehan sneered inwardly. Cloud Master, Mr. Fog, regardless of whether the clouds and mist originated from water, the cloud has a physical form, or the mist has a microscopic form. You really know how to come up with names. The jade flowers slowly rotated again, and that layer of dreamlike blurry scene gradually appeared. Lehan's body didn't move, and his fingers didn't move, but the number of jade flowers gradually increased, slowly extending outwards. One by one, the jade flowers flew out extremely elegantly. Some were in full bloom, some were budding, and some were only half-open petals. There were all kinds of postures, extremely graceful and charming. At this moment, everyone, including Dee and the others, felt that they were obviously enjoying an extreme visual feast. They didn't realize that what was in front of them was a battle of life and death. A battle of the century that wouldn't end until one of them died. The white-robed man who called himself Mr. Fogg had a serious expression on his face for the first time. His two hands slowly extended out of his sleeves. Suddenly, with a shake, his two hands silently entered the sky full of jade flowers like butterflies. Lehan let out a soft whistle and slowly raised his voice. When the jade flowers bloom, the jade flowers come. When the jade flowers bloom, the heaven and earth will fall. As soon as he said that, his body suddenly started to rotate rapidly, as if forming a man-made hurricane. And the jade flowers in the sky actually followed his body's rapid rotation, surging up like the waves of the sea. Just now, it was clearly calm and peaceful. But in the blink of an eye, it was already a raging wave, no longer peaceful. At this moment, the endless jade flower petals were rotating, flashing and dancing because of that strong hurricane. All of them flew towards the source of the hurricane, Mr. Fogg. However, even though the hurricane swept through the jade flowers in the sky, as far as the eye could see, there were still jade flowers everywhere. It was as if they had already extended outwards from here, all the way to the ends of the world. Although the hurricane was powerful, it could only shake a part of it. It was impossible to completely destroy the entire sea of flowers. At this point, a trace of unconcealed astonishment finally flashed across Mr. Fogg's eyes. How could such a viburnum flower sea and viburnum flower sky appear under his powerful attack? The changes before his eyes were obviously no longer a matter of technique. The key was his own cultivation. The scene before his eyes was completely dependent on his extremely dense cultivation to be able to unleash the jade flowers to such a shocking and unshakable level. Mr. Fogg obviously didn't expect that the cultivation of this newly ascended jade flower great emperor had already reached such a level that it could shake him. He knew that the long moan from the jade flower great emperor was probably just an illusion. What he said was definitely not the truth. This was the sea of jade flowers. And when the sea of jade flowers boiled to the extreme, it would evolve into the jade flower heaven. If it really came to the jasper flower sky, even he would probably be injured here. After all, the one here now was only a doppelganger. He wasn't the only self-saint in the true sense. If it really reached the level where the jade flower heaven was formed, this doppelganger alone wouldn't be able to withstand it. Since he already knew the result, he naturally had to avoid it from happening. Therefore, Mr. Fogg let out a long laugh. His body that was originally spinning at an extreme speed suddenly stopped, no longer fighting against the countless jade flowers. The next moment, he had already turned into tens of thousands of doppelgangers, as if shooting out through the gaps of every jade flower. In the next moment, the countless doppelgangers returned to the air and merged into one. He rose into the air and laughed. The jade flower great emperor's cultivation is really good. I acknowledge your position as the heavenly emperor. The jade flower great emperor is indeed worthy of the title. Mr. Fogg's figure rose into the air and instantly rushed to the top of a white cloud. Then that white cloud rose up without any warning and carried his body into the distance. Higher and higher, further and further. In the blink of an eye, he had already completely disappeared. Since things couldn't be done, he made a prompt decision to retreat immediately. There was absolutely no sloppiness. Below, Lehan's white robe was as white as snow. A hint of depression appeared on his face, but it disappeared in a flash. He never expected that the doppelganger of the great emperor would be so decisive. It was just a brief exchange of blows, and he immediately fled. So decisive. I probably still acted too hastily. Xue Leihan sighed in his heart. If he had first engaged him in a prolonged battle, as long as he deliberately created some false impression that he was at a disadvantage, he would most likely be able to retain the other party. Then, at the crucial moment, he would use the jade flower heaven with all his cultivation. Then, there was an 80% chance that this Mr. Fogg could be retained. Even if he couldn't completely kill him, he would be able to severely injure him. That would definitely be an inestimable injury to the great Emperor Cloud. However, he had used the Jade Flower Sea right from the start. Its power was really too shocking. In the end, he had alerted the enemy and scared the other party away. It was really an extremely serious miscalculation. But this wasn't necessarily a bad thing for Xie Danqiong. Because then, he would definitely face the most tragic revenge of the great emperor. And Xie Danqiong, the entire Moyutian currently couldn't bear it. Below, everyone, including the demon empress and the others, all stared at the jade flower great emperor in shock. For a moment, the entire place was silent. There were millions of people here, but one could actually hear a pin drop. The jasper flower sea and the jasper flower sky that had yet to be completed had truly intimidated everyone. From now on, all the participants had a clear understanding in their hearts. So, extreme beauty is death. Just like the jade flower sea and jade flower heaven just now. Below, when the real Xie Danqiong saw this scene, his eyes overflowed with fiery light. So, the jade flower could be used like this. This was the real jade flower. The jade flower sea, the jade flower heaven, Xie Danqiong murmured. Beside him, Chu Yang smiled and said, "That's still not the limit, jade flower limitless." Xie Danqiong's whole body shook, and he almost jumped up. But the master of ceremonies' voice had already sounded. "The mountains bow down, heroes bow down, jade flower great emperor, your name is well deserved. Jade flower great emperor, please ascend to the throne. Become the pinnacle of the world, an unparalleled hegemony." The jade flower great emperor in the sky laughed and said in a clear voice, "Since that's the case, let the jade flowers bloom all over the Moyutian. Jade flowers bloom all over the world, there's no place that doesn't have them." Before his voice died away, the jade flower heaven suddenly exploded. In an instant, there really was no place that didn't have jade flowers. Everywhere was filled with traces of jade flowers. And the figure of the jade flower great emperor also split into countless afterimages in that instant and landed. Just as everyone was dazzled by the beautiful illusion in front of them, Chu Yang, who had been paying attention to the situation in front of him, took a step forward quietly and solemnly stretched out his hand, as if he was going to help his brother ascend to the throne as an elder brother. Of course, no one would deliberately pay attention to him at the moment. Those with high cultivation, such as the emperor and the empress, were all looking at the jade flowers in the sky with heavy hearts, thinking, if I were to encounter this move, how would I deal with it? Would I be able to deal with it if I used all my strength? Chapter 2408. Those with low cultivation bases were all cheering. So beautiful! Today is really the most beautiful day in my life. And at this moment, the real Xie Danqiong quietly came out of the tribulation space and stood at the bottom of the stairs. And Dongwang Xue Leihan naturally retreated and quietly hid in the void again. No one knew where he went. These two swaps were carried out perfectly, and could be said to be flawless. Everything that followed was carried out in a logical manner. Xie Danqiong calmly walked up step by step and accepted the worship of the people of Ink Cloud Palace. Finally, he sat on the throne of the Celestial Emperor and looked down at the world. The continuous cannon salutes sounded for a whole 2 hours. The invincible Celestial Emperor Ink Cloud. The invincible Viburnum Flower. At this moment, Ink Cloud Palace's reputation of being blinded by the extraterrestrial demons was swept away. The people of Ink Cloud Palace really straightened their backs for the first time after the Yuan Tianjie incident. Many people were so emotional that tears streamed down their faces. You have Dong Wang, we have the Viburnum Flower Emperor. You have the Demon Empress, we have the Viburnum Flower Emperor. You have the Saint, we have the Viburnum Flower Emperor. Long live the Viburnum Flower Emperor! It was unknown who was the first to shout in a hoarse voice. Immediately after, tens of thousands of people echoed. For a moment, the shouts shook the heavens and earth. Lure, be careful of those people! Chu Yang transmitted his voice amidst the commotion. Chu Lure said calmly, the targets have all been locked on. I've confirmed that none of them have escaped. Chu Yang nodded happily. Chu Lure didn't make a move at any of the occasions of the ceremony. She preserved the most complete battle power, and the 10 heavy pills that she carried with her all for this moment. With her unparalleled poison skills, she used invisible poison on those who had caused trouble when someone challenged her, as well as those who had ulterior motives to cause trouble. When she was doing this, Chu Lure hid in the dark while those people took the initiative to jump into the light. Although they were still hidden in the crowd, for an expert like Chu Lure who had a saint-level divine sense, as long as they jumped out, they couldn't escape the control of divine sense and had nowhere to hide. These poisons couldn't be enough to control and kill these people because they were too scattered. However, he could be sure that the target would not get lost no matter where he went. We must make sure that no one escapes. Chu Yang's face was filled with worry and murderous intent. Understood. Chu Lure raised her eyebrows, her beautiful eyes filled with quiet confidence. Chu Yang's gaze swept over them. He discovered that Gu Duxing, Dong Wushang, and the others had almost recovered after recuperating for a while. However, the thing that surprised Chu Yang the most was that Tan Tan's recovery speed was even faster than Gu Duxing and the others. Right now, he had actually recovered to his peak condition. It seemed that this fellow had improved quite a bit this time. Go find Mo Tianji and ask him to arrange people for you. Chu Yang sent a telepathic message to Chu Lure. Then, when Xie Danqiong is holding a banquet to celebrate his ascension to the throne and everyone inside is celebrating, eliminate all the targets outside. Chu Lure agreed. She hesitated for a moment before saying, do we still have to follow the original method? Big brother, are you the one who makes the final judgment? Chu Yang said helplessly. I will also participate in this operation. I will execute some of them. Chu Yang already hated slaughtering those enemies who had no power to resist. He didn't want to do it at all. Chu Lure objected seriously. Big brother, now that the ascension ceremony is over, it's the best time to slaughter those people and cut off the 10,000 saints' true spirit. I'm afraid you will have to be there for the entire process. Chu Yang was speechless. He said weakly, all right, I got it. Chu Lure giggled. Her white figure floated towards Mo Tianji. Mo Yutian was boiling with excitement. The Jasper Flower Monarch's unparalleled elegance and peerless divine arts immediately caused Mo Yutian to erupt in jubilation. After a long time, the Jasper Flower Emperor came out and invited Di to leave first. This place was still in a state of extreme celebration. It wasn't until a month later that the excitement gradually subsided. That night, a grand banquet was held in the Jasper Flower Emperor Palace. Dong Wang must be the real deal. Shui Leihan's anger towards his precious seventh brother had reached an uncontrollable level. After leaving the Heaven Zen altar, he hurriedly found a chance to exchange for this fellow. It wasn't easy for him to get the title of Dong Wang. It was just a small amount of effort. It was basically ruined by that guy. That guy knew that he had caused a huge trouble. Once he saw the real deal, he wanted to run away immediately. How could he make it in time? He was directly restrained by Shui Leihan. Shui Leihan knew that his brother had a sharp tongue. He completely ignored that guy's pleas for mercy. He directly tied him up with the dragon snaring rope and threw him into his personal space. After everything was over, he would properly deal with this guy. Dong Huang's reputation was ruined just like that. How could this be a simple matter? On that night, What Shui Leihan had to endure wasn't just a little bit. Even though he had long been mentally prepared, in front of the group of heavenly Thearchs and Empress, the demon Empress, Yao Xiner, faced him coldly. The heavenly Darch of Heartless was dissatisfied, the heavenly Darch of Maniac's Sword glared at him furiously, and the heavenly Darch of Flaming Sun was icy cold. The only ones who were more or less friendly to this important Dongwang were the heavenly Emperor Ziwuji, the heavenly Emperor Wuwei Mo Qingqing, and the heavenly Emperor Stupa Mo Huiqin. However, these three were old acquaintances of Dongwang in the past. However, as time passed, Dongwang didn't dare to guarantee anything. A friendly attitude didn't mean anything. Who didn't know how to put on a show, De and the Empress side in this ascension ceremony was at most a superficial attitude. Shui Leihan didn't dare to guarantee that everyone's thoughts were exactly the same as reality, especially towards the heavenly Emperor Maniac Sword Wu Yequang and the heavenly Emperor Icy Snow Meng Jinghui. Shui Leihan was especially doubtful about these two people. He wasn't doubtful about their current positions, but because, in the past, many years ago, everyone's personal relationship was still very good. Now, these two people were completely standing on the opposite side of him. This reality made Shui Leihan feel that there was something fishy about it. However, this kind of thing couldn't be asked in such an occasion. Putting aside the Emperor Dongwang, who was despised by everyone, this meal, just on the surface, could be said to be a happy one for both the guests and the host. However, the surging waves in the dark didn't stop. Xie Danqiong could also feel this. Therefore, after a simple social interaction, Xie Danqiong said that his body was too exhausted from the continuous battles today. Thus, he excused himself and left the banquet, leaving this group of old friends and old rivals of millions of years to settle their personal relationships or matters. Although Xie Danqiong, as the host, was the first to leave the banquet, leaving only a group of guests here, this seemed a little negligent. However, to these people, this was a truly appropriate reception. They were all old friends who hadn't seen each other for hundreds of thousands of years. If a new person whom they didn't know were to come in, it would be the greatest pain to not be able to speak freely. Regarding Xie Danqiong, De and Empress expressed their understanding on the surface. Although there were only a few battles today, none of the people Xie Danqiong faced were ordinary characters. The last person he faced, Mr. Wu, was an expert among experts. It was only right that Xie Danqiong was exhausted. If he was really unharmed and full of energy, then the rankings of De and Empress would really be rewritten. Once the Jade Flower Emperor left, the Heavenly Emperor Extreme Heaven Merciless, Zui Wuqing, stood up decisively and said to Shui Leihan, "Emperor Donghuang's power is really earth-shattering today. It's really an eye-opener for me. I'm impressed." This sentence seemed to be easy to say, but the tone was really a little sarcastic. Shui Leihan said lightly, "Is that so? You're already earth-shattering with just a few words?" Then in Brother Zui's eyes, this earth-shattering power is really quite easy. The Flaming Sun Heavenly Emperor, Longing Huan, chuckled. Of course, when others say these words, they don't have such power. But when it comes from Emperor Dongwang, how can it be compared? It's really extraordinary, really extraordinary. Shui Leihan glanced sideways and sneered. Then I'm afraid you're a little ignorant. This Emperor Dongwang didn't just become earth-shattering at this moment. Instead, I've already been famous for a long time ago. Not to mention this Emperor Dongwang saying a few words, even if I didn't say a word, just by sitting here, this Emperor Donghuang's power is already limitless. And on this point, although the Flaming Sun Heavenly Emperor is famous, but this was really meaningful. In the Dongwang space, that impostor was curling his lips madly. You're still talking about me. What you're saying now isn't the same as what I'm saying, but how would he know that if he didn't lay the groundwork for him previously, the current Shui Leihan wouldn't have to do this at all? For a moment, the smell of gunpowder in the hall seemed to be a little thick. At the last part of this banquet, the palace guards and palace maids all felt that they had inexplicably lost consciousness. Then, they fell asleep and didn't feel anything anymore. When they woke up the next morning, they saw that the hall was very quiet. There was no movement at all. All the furnishings were in their original positions, as if nothing had happened. The only slight abnormality was that a jade spoon was broken into two. But this didn't seem to be anything unusual. In every banquet, there would always be a few tableware that were damaged. This time, only a jade spoon was broken. It really wasn't much, it was very normal. Everyone cleaned up as if nothing had happened and went about their own business. Therefore, no one knew that last night, in this hall, towards the end of the banquet, the smell of gunpowder gradually thickened. Dee and the others had a battle in this hall. Well, to be more precise, it should be a chaotic battle. A group fight. Cough, I said it would be very difficult, but I didn't say it would be careless. I said I had to write the ending well, but I didn't say I would speed up and end it today. Chapter 2409. This group fight was really thorough. Dong Wang Shui Leihan displayed his valiant strength to the fullest. Facing the encirclement of so many people, he was actually able to attack from the east, attack from the west, attack from the south, and attack from the north. He wasn't at a disadvantage at all, and he even seemed to have some strength left. With the Demon Empress joining the fight, the hall was instantly divided into two groups. One group continued to attack Dong Wang, while the other group dealt with the Demon Empress. The situation was in a stalemate. Even though the Demon Empress was much more powerful than the other party had the advantage of numbers. Even if they could not win, they would not be defeated. With the strength of this group of people, if this stalemate continued, not to mention 1 or 2 days, 1 or 2 months, even 1 or 2 years would not be a problem. Fortunately, someone kicked Wu Yequang's nose intentionally or unintentionally. Speaking of which, this could not be helped. Who asked someone to be too short? If it was someone else, the kick would only hit their lower abdomen. However, when it came to Wu Yequang, it directly hit his nose. For some reason, Mo Huichen happened to be beside Wu Yequang at this moment. Therefore, Wu Yequang thought that it was Mo Huichen's doing and turned to attack him. On the other side, Meng Jinghui also joined the fight. At this point, the two groups changed from a targeted attack to a group fight. At first, everyone wanted to attack Shui Leihan to vent their anger. However, later on, the fighting became more and more intense. Basically, everyone was facing 7 or 8 enemies at the same time. Anyway, other than themselves, everyone was an enemy. Everyone did not have a fixed target at all. Whoever was in front of them, they would attack. There was no such thing as a group division anymore. However, during this process, no matter how intense the fight was, there was no sound at all. Although there were differences in the actual strength of these people, in general, everyone was still at the same level. Moreover, they were all at the super level. Everyone controlled their strength perfectly, and did not leak out a single bit. If they really fought, it would be like a thunderous punch as heavy as a mountain. However, if they did not succeed, it would be like a light wave that could not even kill a mosquito. However, there were still 2 people who were at a disadvantage: Meng Jinghui and Wu Yequang. Meng Jinghui was publicly acknowledged as the best gigolo. Before Xie Danqiang joined Di, Meng Jinghui could be said to be the most handsome man in this group. His face was exceptionally handsome. Therefore, the number of people who were beaten up today was also the most. Everyone wanted to punch this super gigolo in the face. As for Wu Yequang, it was purely an undeserved disaster. He was short in stature, and would unconsciously attack his lower body. Often, the attacks aimed at his lower body would attract particularly fierce counterattacks. What was even more tragic was that because he was really too short, the other people casually raised their feet to the height of his shoulders. It was as if he had been beaten into a dazzling mess of colors. However, it was still the same. Because these people had a very precise grasp of their strength, they didn't damage anything in the hall at all. Everyone had a tacit understanding in their hearts. Whoever damaged something in front of them, this group fight would be over. And the one who damaged the item would be the ultimate loser of this fight. In the end, it was the jade spoon in front of Zui Wuqing that broke into 2, thus, the chaotic battle came to an end. However, compared to the others, Zui Wuqing was at least well-dressed. As for the others, apart from East Sovereign and Demon Empress, they were all bruised and battered. Among them, Wu Yequang, the maniac sword Heavenly Emperor, was the most miserable. At the last moment, he accidentally kicked up, and the landing point was actually the Demon Empress' chest. Although he didn't kick up, he was still beaten up ruthlessly by the Demon Empress, who flew into a rage out of humiliation. Then, everyone shouted and angrily beat up the hooligan. They pressed the maniac sword Heavenly Emperor to the ground and beat him up into a mess. However, all the accumulated anger from before had disappeared without a trace in this group fight. Perhaps on the general standpoint, everyone still had their own differences and their own insistence. However, when it came to personal grudges, there was almost no more. Who would have thought that such a hooligan-like fight would appear after D? Everyone had a feeling that this gathering was probably the most peaceful one. And from now on, when they met again, it might already be another kind of bad situation. Therefore, in such a group fight, they vented all their personal grudges and dissatisfaction with each other in this group fight. In the future, you and I might be enemies, but that was a matter of standpoint and had nothing to do with personal relations. What kind of proud people were Dee and Empress? They deliberately used such a chaotic battle to resolve the knot in each other's hearts. It was also an expression of pride. Today, I will fight in a chaotic battle, and I will have no regrets. Tomorrow, I will fight to the death, and I will have no regrets. From now on, there would be no history between enemies. This kind of method let many people vent the negative emotions that had accumulated for hundreds of thousands of years in an instant. This had to be said to be a very strange thing. There was also one thing that the guards of the palace found very strange. When Dee and Empress, these high and mighty kings, came in, every one of them was talking and laughing. Their demeanor was dignified and full of style, and their ostentation was even more awe-inspiring. However, when they left, each one of them left faster than the other, like a gust of wind. It seemed that even their faces couldn't be seen clearly, and they had already completely disappeared. Only Dong Wang and Demon Empress came out last. Only these two people still walked out immaculately and dignified. They said goodbye to each other and left slowly. Dong Wang is still the most dignified, and Demon Empress is still the most elegant. The guards all thought to themselves. Unlike Maniac Sword Heavenly Emperor, who actually covered his face and ran away. I don't know what shameful thing he did. And on this night. On the other hand, the hunting operation outside was in full swing and was abnormally hot. Based on the clues provided by Chu Lur, Mo Tianji mobilized 300 saint experts and swept through the entire Cheonghua city. Not a single person was caught. When Chu Yang carried out the goal of annihilating the true spirit, he felt horrified. This wasn't just 3 or 5, but 350 or 350. There were tens of thousands of people here, and they were densely packed as far as the eye could see. But they were dealt with by a sword just like that, and even their souls were annihilated. Even though he had no choice, Chu Yang still felt very uncomfortable in his heart. He hated the mastermind of the myriad saints' true spirit even more. On this night, after Dong Wang and Demon Empress parted ways, they went back to meet again and had a secret talk. The only person who knew a little about this matter was the beautiful lady in white who had always been by Demon Empress' side. But she only vaguely heard Demon Empress ask, "Are you sure?" Then Dong Wang seemed to nod. Then the two sighed in unison. Then they discussed in low voices for a long time. But this time, no one knew what they were talking about. An extreme heaven great Emperor Zui Wuqing and Flaming Sun Heavenly Emperor Long Yinghuan also had a secret talk after they went back. Similarly, no one knew what they were talking about. It was just that the expressions on these two people's faces were extremely serious. It seemed that spies could also be contagious. Other than these two groups, Mo Huichin and Meng Jinghui didn't return to Star Palace after they came out of the palace. Instead, after the two of them removed the scars on their faces, they walked among the common people. The two of them casually found a tavern to continue drinking. Of course, they also seemed to be discussing something. Obviously, no one would know that these two heavenly emperors went out to drink like two drunkards. But the common point was that Dong Wang and Demon Empress both sighed deeply at the end of their conversation. Zui Wuqing and Long Yinghuan also sighed deeply. This sigh. No one knew why everyone was sighing. But if it was heard by others, they would feel that these few people's sighs were filled with the same feeling: helplessness, powerlessness, anger, and all kinds of complicated feelings. That thick sense of loss, Xie Danqiong returned to his bedroom with a heavy expression. He was deeply aware of how difficult it was to reach the level of De and Empress. If his cultivation was always at this level, then he would always be at the bottom of De and Empress. Not to mention whether others would agree with him, even he found it hard to accept that he was already on par with those people. Although he had received Dong Huang's generous help today and passed smoothly, Dong Huang obviously couldn't help him forever. In the end, he still had to rely on his own strength. Xie Danqiong was silent for a long time and didn't say anything. Madame Mei looked at him worriedly. After a long time, she heard Xie Danqiong say in a low but determined voice, "No matter what, I can't let down the 4 words Jade Flower Emperor." Madame Mei's heart was filled with an inexplicable worry, because she knew that Xie Danqiong had already made up his mind to raise his own strength. And this process, to Xie Danqiong, would undoubtedly be endless cruelty. But although she was worried, her heart was filled with pride at the same time. This was her man. He would never be willing to fall behind others. He would never turn back and die 1,000 times. Right now, Mo Yuntian was back on the right track again. Heavenly Emperor Mo Yuntian, although his position was high, his power wasn't very heavy. Perhaps it was more appropriate to say that he was a spiritual symbol. The specific matters that Xie Danqiong needed to worry about were actually very little. 10% of the work was shared by the original military officials. On this point, they were all familiar with handling affairs. With Mu Tsung Lan's full supervision, there wouldn't be any negligence. Chu Yang and the others had the same idea as Xie Danqiong. It was just that by the time they gathered together to talk about this matter, it was already the afternoon of the 3rd day. From start to finish, a total of 500,000 city guards worked together with the military and more than 100 saint experts from the imperial palace. Finally, all the myriad saint true spirits were wiped out completely. Well, the wiped out here referred to the batch that sneaked into Cheonghua City. Speaking of which, what really exceeded everyone's expectations was that even until the end, when all the true spirit targets were killed, the mysterious mastermind behind the scenes didn't appear to find trouble again. It was as if he had sent these people to their deaths. From beginning to end, there was no reaction at all. This matter was extremely abnormal. Chapter 24:10. Xie Danqiong still wanted to plead. But he was cut off by Chu Yang's words. He pointed at Xie Danqiong's nose in a fiendish manner. "I also told you that you'd better give up on this idea. We rushed over from afar to help you, and you don't say thank you. It's fine if you give us some things. Who asked us to be sworn brothers? But you actually want to poach people from my hands. You. Danqiong, how can you be like this? Isn't this too much?" These words made Xie Danqiong feel guilty. He was so embarrassed that he couldn't say anything for a long time. Then, Chu Yang pulled Mo Qingwu and left. When night came, Xie Danqiong finally reacted. He hurriedly came to Chu Yang and said, "Boss, what you said just now was wrong. Meng Wuye is our Mayun Heaven's man. How can you say that he's your man? He has an official position in Moyun Heaven. His relatives and old friends are all here. Don't you think this is reasonable?" Chu Yang was stunned. "Is it like this?" Xie Danqiong nodded heavily. "Definitely. Since you said so, then you can keep him. As long as he agrees, I have no objections." Chu Yang waved his hand generously. Xie Danqiong was overjoyed. He hurriedly went out to look for him. But he couldn't find him after searching for a long time. After asking, he found out that everyone who came from Demon Emperor Heaven's Heavenly Armament Pavilion had already returned this afternoon. It seemed that there was an urgent order from above. They left in a hurry. They didn't even pack a lot of luggage. It was as if they were fleeing. At this moment, they were probably already on the vast sea. Urgent order from above? Who else could Meng Wuya's superior be? Xie Danqiong suddenly realized something, and angrily returned. But he saw Chu Yang coming over with a smile, and putting his arm around his shoulder. Danqiong, you see, there are so many provisions here. We brothers are a family. So we will leave them all to you. You don't have to be polite. Looking at the pile of tattered provisions that Meng Wuya and his group couldn't take away in time, Xie Danqiong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. On this day, the Demon Empress ordered that Demon Emperor Heaven's supreme demon Ning Ning should immediately return to Demon Emperor Heaven with all the experts of Demon Emperor Heaven. As for herself, she did not plan to leave. She had other plans. The truth was that she had other plans as well. Just as a certain Grand Empress was about to set off, the Demon Empress floated away, her whereabouts unknown. As for the other heavenly emperors, some of them had also left, and some of them had also chosen to wander in ink-cloud sky for a period of time. It had only been a few days, but the liveliness from before had already disappeared. All the peak experts had scattered. Tan Tan and Xie Dan Feng bid farewell to Chu Yang, and disappeared without a trace. Chu Yang wasn't worried about this. Tan Tan's cultivation was already at the high level of the Sage Realm. He was about to reach the peak of the Sage Realm. In this world, only a very small number of people could cause him harm, except for the top experts like Di Ho. As for the others, even if they couldn't defeat him in the end, it wouldn't be a problem for them to escape unscathed. Moreover, it seemed that Tan Tan was going to do something. Chu Yang could see this from Tan Tan's expression. Tan Tan and his in-laws left. The only people close to Chu Yang here were Zi Xieching, and Mo Qingwu, Brother Tiger, and the divine soul of the calamity. The large team of tens of thousands of people that had accompanied them previously was now only left with 3 people and 1 beast. Plus a ghost. However, Chu Yang was extremely relaxed at this moment. That was because he had sent the family members of his brothers to their respective sides during this trip. Allowing their families to reunite was tantamount to reducing the responsibility that had been on his shoulders for a long time by more than half. What would happen in the future would be everyone's own responsibility. Every man had a responsibility that every man should bear. This was something that they needed to bear with their own efforts. Others had no right and no ability to help them bear these responsibilities. And their families were precisely the responsibilities that everyone needed to bear. After removing countless burdens, the huge stone in his heart was lifted, and Chu Yang, who had regained his relaxation, suggested that they walk around ink-cloud sky and stroll around. Of course, on the surface, this was the purpose. In reality, whether or not he had any other thoughts, Chu Yang didn't say it clearly. Zi Xieching and Mo Qingwu naturally agreed with Chu Yang's suggestion. What else could be more satisfying than going on a trip with their sweetheart? The issue of safety was not a problem at all. With the strength of the 3 of them, plus Brother Tiger who had now recovered his saint-level strength, and the divine soul of the calamity who had an immortal body, they believed that even if they were to face any one of God's descendants, they might not necessarily be unable to fight. At the very least, they still had the confidence to escape unscathed. So everyone didn't think too much about it. It was rare for them to be able to relax. They didn't bid farewell to Xie Danqiong. And Mo Qingwu carried Brother Tiger who was in the form of a kitten, and the divine soul of the calamity was still invisible in the dark. The 3 of them walked out of Qianghua City slowly. The moment they left the city, they looked back and recalled the fighting in ink-cloud sky during this period of time. They couldn't help but sigh. Then, their eyes lit up. At the end of the gate tower of ink-cloud skies Qianghua City, there was a bright yellow figure standing tall and straight. His gaze seemed to pass through the void, quietly watching the 3 of them leave. Chu Yang chuckled and waved his hand. And Mo Qingwu and Zi Xieching also smiled and waved gently. Then, the 3 of them floated up, seemingly slow but actually very fast. They quickly escaped from the sight of the bright yellow figure on the gate tower. On the city gate tower, Xie Danqiong stood with his hands behind his back for a long time. Watching Chu Yang and the other two disappear at the end of his sight like smoke, his face was still full of a warm smile. He murmured, "Big brother, the next time we meet again should be the time to fight the extraterrestrial demons. Don't worry, in Cloud Sky, I will definitely be able to bring out an iron army to wipe out the demons. Calamity Chunghua will follow the direction of Big Brother's sword and bloom, in the purple heavenly palace." Xie Danqiong gazed at the direction where the three of them left for a long time. Even though the other party's figure was long gone, the bright yellow figure still stood there, unwilling to leave until the sky was dark. Night fell as scheduled. In the boundless twilight, the figure of Ink Cloud Sky's Chunghua Heavenly Emperor almost became a scenery on the city wall. After crossing a mountain range and completely cutting off the gazes of the people behind them, the three of them slowed down their footsteps at the same time, talking softly as they walked. Suddenly, they seemed to have sensed something. Looking up, they saw a white-robed figure standing tall and straight in the twilight. His hands were behind his back, with endless grace and elegance, supreme dignity and elegance. There was also a kind of royal aura that no one dared to offend. Just by standing there, it was as if he was the ruler of the world, overlooking the world. The person standing there was Dongwang Shueleihan. He had actually been waiting here in advance. "Why haven't you left yet?" Chu Yang was a little surprised. "The reason why I haven't left is the same as the reason why you haven't left." Shueleihan smiled and greeted Mo Qingwu. "Little girl, do you still remember me, an old friend you haven't seen in a long time?" Mo Qingwu smiled gently. "How could I forget, big brother Shui?" Shueleihan was very happy. Smiling, he said, "I've really waited a long time for you to call me Big Brother Shui." This sentence made Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu understand at the same time. There was no need to say anything else. Yes, it had really been a long time. It was as long as 2 lifetimes. The three of them smiled knowingly at the same time. The 4 of them gathered in one place. Although they didn't discuss it in advance, they all rushed towards the north at the same time. After running for thousands of miles, they saw another person waiting in front of them. He was dressed in green and looked rather handsome. He was pacing back and forth with an impatient look on his face. When he saw Shueleihan and the others approaching, he actually opened his mouth and cursed angrily. "Damn it, why are you only here now?" Chu Yang and the others didn't know who this person was. When they heard what he said, they couldn't help but be shocked. He actually dared to speak to Shueleihan like this. It seemed that there weren't many people in the world who dared to do so. Even Di Yi's descendant might not dare to speak so boldly. And this guy was obviously not Di Yi's descendant. "You actually dared to scold him in front of me?" Shueleihan's face was full of black lines. He kicked out fiercely. Poof! That guy was instantly kicked flat on the ground. He couldn't help but look aggrieved. He got up and said, "You only know how to show off in front of me. You hit me for no reason and don't even allow me to fight back. Where the hell did you get the airs of a family head from? If you have the ability, don't use it on me. Go and use it on others. What kind of East Emperor are you? If you have the ability, go and kick Master Yun. If you have the ability, go and kick the Heavenly Demon King. What kind of ability is kicking me every day?" This guy scolded and scolded. His mouth was crooked and his eyes were slanted. His face was full of grievance and strong indignation. He really dared to say anything. Who exactly was this person? Wasn't he too fucking arrogant? Chu Yang and the other two saw it clearly and were speechless. Shueleihan's kick just now was quite substantial. It wasn't any less than the 2 kicks that killed the 2 king-level experts that day. Chu Yang and the others asked themselves, if they were the ones who suffered that kick just now, their physical bodies would be instantly destroyed at least, and they would be turned into ashes at worst. This was definitely not a joke. But although this person in front of them was kicked flat on the ground, he seemed to be completely fine. There wasn't even the slightest injury on him. Who exactly was this person? Where did such an expert come from? Shueleihan was so angry that his nose was crooked. He roared, Shut your damn mouth! Chu Yang and the other two looked at the scene in front of them in a daze. They all felt that the appearance of this guy was simply turning the world upside down. It was Mo Qingwu who asked in a gentle voice. Brother Xue, this is… Hearing that, Xue Leihan explained awkwardly. This person, is my seventh brother. Our family is unfortunate. Cough cough. His name is Xue Qinghan. Yes, others call him Xue Qi. Then he said, yes, he's the person who temporarily pretended to be me during the ceremony. Even if the East Emperor had accumulated millions of years of pride, he was still really embarrassed at this moment. When he went out today, he met an old classmate. He said in shock, wow, why are you even younger than when you were in school? Why are you getting more and more handsome? His heart instantly felt as if it had eaten honey. Chapter 24:11. So it's seventh brother! Chu Yang was enlightened. Naturally, he recalled the classic performance of this guy at the coronation ceremony. He couldn't help but think of GMO and Tan Tan. He couldn't help but sympathize with him. He said, how is it unfortunate? Not to mention that seventh brother's cultivation is already at the top of the world. Those guys that seventh brother scolded back then were really enjoyable. It made people enraptured and unable to control themselves. Hearing this, Xue Qi's eyebrows danced. She couldn't control herself. She felt as if she had met the best friend in her life. She walked forward and patted Chu Yang's shoulder. She laughed. Brother, I like what you say. In fact, it's like this. However, these people only care about this and that. They are all sanctimonious. When they talk, they beat around the bush. What's wrong with that? In the end, it's just a fight. What's the big deal? Xue Leihan couldn't hold it in anymore. He growled in a low voice. Bastard! You appeared in my appearance. In the end, if they want to fight, they will fight with me. You're just causing trouble for me. Xue Qi glared and said with conviction. What trouble can there be? Can't you beat them? Xue Leihan was speechless. This isn't a question of whether I can beat them or not. You, Xue Qi said. Since you're not afraid of them, what's wrong with fighting? Then, Xue Qi suddenly flung his sleeves and put on an extremely suave posture. As he paced, he said slowly, in the martial world, who doesn't get fucked? The martial world is a battlefield. No matter what, it's fucked. Today, others fucked me. Tomorrow, I'll fuck them. Shut up! Xue Leihan's voice changed. He pointed at his younger brother with a trembling finger. She said with disappointment, look at you. You're already so old. How can you still speak and do things so carelessly? Someone like you won't be able to enter our family's ancestral grave even if you die. Xue Qi shook his head. Bah! Do you think you can enter after you die? Don't forget, we're the group of people who are purposely forgotten by the clan. You actually want to enter the ancestral grave? I didn't know that you're so ambitious. I really couldn't tell. Xue Leihan's face darkened. Old Seven! Can you be a little more serious? Xue Qi cried out. How am I indecent? I've always been speaking normally. Big brother, tell me. Since when have I been indecent? I've always been a decent person. The problem is you. No matter what I do, you're biased against me. You just think that I'm not serious. Then tell me, what can I do? Xue Leihan took a deep breath. Suddenly, he roared like a thunderbolt. You've never been righteous in your generation. Snow 7 immediately retorted. Shut up! Xue Leihan roared. Listen to me! A finger was poking Xue Qi's forehead, one finger at a time. She gritted her teeth. When you're in front of outsiders, can't you at least give me some face? Can you do it? Xue Qi staggered after being pointed at. She was in a sorry state. She hurriedly raised her hands and surrendered. Okay. You're my big brother, my ancestor. Ancestor, I'll do whatever you say. I'll also say that your fart smells good. This should be fine. This should be fine, right? Now, even your fart has become a delicacy. You won't ask me to do that, right? I'm very helpless, big brother. Shuai Leihan instantly dropped his hands helplessly. His face was dejected and defeated. Chu Yang, Mo Qingwu and Zi Xieching instantly burst into laughter. It was the first time that everyone had seen someone who could actually use his mouth to force the world-renowned East Sovereign into such a state of helplessness and hopelessness. This feeling was simply too good. To think that I, Shuai Leihan, have dominated the world and dominated the eastern sky all my life. How high-spirited I was. The only thing that can make me feel helpless and helpless is only you. Only you? Shuai Leihan looked up and sighed. Xueqi pouted and muttered softly. What do you mean by dominating the world and dominating the eastern sky? If you have the guts, why don't you try killing everyone in the eastern sky? That's what it means to be high-spirited from head to toe. Shuai Leihan closed his eyes fiercely. He only felt that his lungs were rapidly swelling due to anger, high-spirited thinking of the past, but lacking in spirit facing the present. What could he do? Shuai Leihan knew that he couldn't do anything to his younger brother. He could only let out a long sigh. He turned his head and smiled bitterly. I've made a fool of myself in front of you. Sigh, this is my younger brother, the one who has been giving me headaches since childhood. I really can't do anything to him. He just doesn't hold back. Xueqi rolled her eyes and said, What are you talking about? Even our parents don't have headaches. Why do you have headaches? That's because you're a busybody who's looking for trouble and being arrogant. Putting on airs as if you have a lot of authority. Chu Zhang almost spurted out. Even someone as solemn and cold as Zi Xieching couldn't help but smile like a blooming flower under such circumstances. And Mo Qingwu was even laughing so hard that she was shaking. She actually found Shuai Leihan, this clown of a brother, very interesting. After all, it hadn't been long since Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu came to the heavenly imperial court. Little did they know that although the name Xueqi was not well known and not very eye-catching, the two names Xueqi and Xueqi were really famous in the heavenly imperial court. In some areas, this name was even more well-known than De Empress. It was even more frightening. If the number one person in the heavenly imperial court was Lord Yun, then the number one thief in the heavenly imperial court was undoubtedly Xueqi. As long as he wanted something from you, it was as if you had already made a blood contract with him. There was absolutely no escape. And the number one killer in the heavenly imperial court, Xueqi. As long as he accepts your request, then no matter who your enemy is, no matter how high your position is, no matter how powerful you are, no matter how far you are, no matter how far you are, no matter how powerful you are, no matter how far you are, no matter how far away you are, you will definitely be killed within 7 days without exception. Therefore, among the several identities of Xueqi Han, perhaps the identity of Donghuang's younger brother was the most inconspicuous one. As for the other two names, they were really famous in the world. It was just that Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu did not know about this for now. As for Zi Xieching, she must have heard of the names and legends of the number one thief and the number one killer. But she really could not connect this rascal in front of her with the two legendary names. She could not help it. After all, he was such a backbone, in reality. We are all brothers, why are you so hostile? Come, come, come! Chu Yang separated the two brothers very enthusiastically. He put his arm around Xueqi's shoulder and said, Don't mind him, your brother is old-fashioned. There is no way to communicate with him. There is no way to reason with him. Soulmate! Xueqi's eyes were almost filled with tears. He held Chu Yang's hand and said, As the saying goes, great minds think alike. I knew there would be someone who would understand me. For so many years I have been oppressed by him. I have been in an abyss of suffering all the time. Chu Yang choked unnaturally in the wind. This fellow's words were really out of line. Not to mention his identity, as Donghuang's younger brother, just based on his rather high level of cultivation, even if he really wanted to live in an abyss of suffering, it would be a very, very difficult thing to do. Needless to say, the 3-person group became a 5-person group. The group went all the way to the north. Xue Leihan kept a straight face and tried not to speak if he could. But Xueqi got along well with Chu Yang at the first moment. It was almost like he was deliberately trying to deal with Chu Yang. The two of them even fought and competed with each other. Every time this happened, Chu Yang, who was being welcomed, would feel like crying. This guy's cultivation is really too high. It's so high that it's simply outrageous. It seems that Yuan Tianji was at most at this level. How could he be a match for him? When Chu Yang fought with him, it was not a competition at all. It was a total torture. Especially when he saw Xueqi like that, he was simply taking pleasure in torturing others. Chu Yang even suspected that he deliberately put down his identity and got close to him so that he could fight with him and be tortured by him. The torture along the way was endless. Occasionally, when Xueqi saw that Chu Yang could not take it anymore, he would turn around and look for Mo Qingwu and Zi Xiecheng to fight. All in all, this was a person who could not stay idle at all. If you want to exchange pointers, then let's exchange pointers properly. What Chu Yang really can't stand is that this guy not only has a high cultivation level, but also doesn't have any tender feelings for the fairer sex. His moves are extremely sharp. He doesn't know what it means to be lenient. Therefore, Chu Yang and the two of them were very unlucky along the way. However, to really call it unlucky, it seemed a little guilty. What kind of person was Xueqi? He was a super powerful figure in the Heaven Imperial Court. To the three of them, the benefits of such a sparring session were simply too great. To have an expert of the same level as Di and Empress to spar with, that was a super experience that could only be encountered by chance. Therefore, the cultivation of the three of them actually increased by leaps and bounds along the way. It could be said that they experienced pain and happiness together. Along the way, on average, Xueqi would fight with Chu Yang 7 or 8 times a day. And it was usually Chu Yang who challenged him. He lost every battle, but he kept on fighting and never admitted defeat. Xue Leihan, who had been watching from the side, was really a little speechless. In the past, he only knew that his younger brother was a masochist. Why didn't he see that Chu Yang, who had good intentions, was actually a masochist? Towards his younger brother, Xue Leihan was exasperated. But towards Chu Yang's behavior of taking the initiative to seek torture, Xue Leihan did not comment on it verbally, but he admired it in his heart. Not everyone could withstand 7 or 8 times a day of torture, repeating it over and over again without losing their will. Chu Yang would soon be defeated every time he rushed forward. However, he would bravely rush forward again every time he did so. This kind of desire to improve one's own strength moved Xue Leihan a little. Defeated every battle, defeated every battle, defeated every battle. Chapter 24:12. When a martial arts fanatic met another battle maniac. Perhaps only these 2 sentences could describe the current situation of these 2 people. This journey was simply too horrible to look at. These words were absolutely true. Because the road along the way was really full of devastation, and it was too horrible to look at. However, with each extreme battle, Chu Yang also realized how big the gap was between himself and this kind of real peak master. Originally, he thought that he was already infinitely close to the high-level saint level, and was not much different from the top masters like Diho. But now, it seemed that this kind of thinking was simply wrong, very, very wrong. This was not a problem of the gap at all, but a fundamental difference in quality and quantity. In terms of cultivation, Xueqi's strength was actually only a little bit lower than Xue Leihan's. This little bit was at most half a step. In other words, Xue Leihan was a super peak master who had already stepped out of the saint peak level, while Xueqi, on the other hand, had 1 foot in the saint peak level, and the other foot had not been pulled out, which meant that he was a quasi-super peak master. But this difference of half a step made Xueqi completely unable to fight back in front of Xue Leihan. And the gap between Chu Yang and Xueqi was even greater than the gap between Xueqi and Xue Leihan. This was the fundamental difference in nature. At night, When Chu Yang and Xueqi were fighting, the tribulation spirit was still a little worried, so he hid and watched from the side. Xueqi actually made a sound, and then reached out and grabbed the tribulation spirit from the void. Eh? What is this? The tribulation spirit was instantly scared out of his wits. The tribulation spirit had always known that he was not a match for masters like Diho, and he did not even dare to fight with them. But he was still confident that even if he was in front of those people, he still had the strength and confidence to escape unscathed. But now, he had never encountered such a thing. To think that he had been caught like a chick. His status was an intangible and intangible existence. How could it be? How could it be? To be able to catch him, it meant that not only did he have nowhere to hide, but he also had no way to escape. Being caught by people of this level, it was just a matter of minutes before his spirit was completely destroyed. Damn it! After discovering the Calamity Divine Soul, Xueqi had a new target to fight. After all, this guy's strength was above Chu Yang and the other two, especially with the advantage of an immortal body. But after fighting a few rounds, the tribulation spirit avoided this person. This kind of pure masochistic activity should be left to the little ancestor. Because of the divine soul of the calamity, Xueqi found another one for him to trample. Yes. It was the target of the battle, Brother Hu. Of course, Brother Tiger would only participate in the battle against Mo Qing Wu. Because Brother Tiger's current strength was still below Chu Yang's, he really wasn't qualified to fight Xueqi alone. And this combination was the most enjoyable for Xueqi, besides the fact that Mo Qing Wu and Brother Tiger's combined strength was not to be underestimated. Also, although Brother Tiger's strength was not as good as Chu Yang's, he had a pair of sharp claws. He was the only one who dared to fight Xueqi head-on. Xueqi had always fought with his bare hands. There was no exception in all the battles in his life. But his pair of fists was comparable to any weapon in the world. There had never been an enemy who could fight him head-on. And although Brother Tiger's strength was not as good, he could fight Xueqi head-on. It was indeed a rare anomaly. These people's footsteps were very fast. Although they were fighting as they walked, it didn't delay their journey at all. In just 7 or 8 days, they had already arrived at the foot of the Snow Mountain. Ink Sky Snow Mountain. They arrived here. Even Snow 7, who had always been playful and carefree, was unexpectedly serious. Xuelehan looked at the Snow Mountain for a long time and said lightly, "Zihao's 2 guards died here back then." Chu Yang sighed deeply upon hearing this. He wasn't surprised to come here, because this was one of the reasons why he stayed in Ink Sky Snow Mountain. After a while, everyone had already arrived at the top of the Snow Mountain. There were no more movements. Xuelehan waved his sleeves and everyone's bodies became light. They had already crossed hundreds of miles of space and arrived at the top of the Snow Mountain. Now that Yuan Tianji is dead, the restrictions he left behind in the past are probably useless. Xuelehan's face was heavy. He said softly, "You guys step back for a while." After Chu Yang and the others stepped back for 100 feet, Xuelehan slowly stretched out his hands and made a gesture of embracing the world. Suddenly, a gust of wind came out from his palms and turned into a tornado. It rushed into the air and tore a black hole in the space. The tornado became bigger and bigger, and the area of the black hole also became bigger and bigger. In this man-made black hole, there seemed to be countless scenes faintly changing, and there seemed to be countless people or things flashing past. It was as if the river of time had suddenly started to flow backward. Such a strange scene was too much for the eyes to take in, but it was also inexplicably shocking. Xueqi's face showed an unprecedentedly serious expression. Chu Yang asked softly, "What's going on?" Xueqi took a deep breath and said, "This is my big brother's real domain, the real East Emperor domain, the reversal of time and space. He wants to see how Zihao's 2 guards came here 1,000,000 years ago, and how they were killed." "Ah? It's actually reversing 1,000,000 years of time?" Chu Yang was shocked. Xueqi nodded slowly. "I just don't know if Big Brother can do it." Chu Yang, Zi Xieching and Mo Qingwu looked at each other, and they all felt deeply shocked. An inch of time was worth an inch of gold. An inch of gold couldn't buy an inch of time. Once time was gone, there was no turning back. In such a legendary divine realm, even if it was just reversing the flow of time for a few days, it was already heaven-defying enough. Yet Shui Leihan actually wanted to go against the flow of time for 1,000,000 years in one go. This was simply unbelievable and appalling. Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu both thought of their previous lives at the same time. Could it be? Shui Qi sighed, and one sentence instantly broke their guesses. Big Brother's method can only temporarily reverse time to the original time, but it can't change what has already happened at that time. He's just a pure bystander. Hearing this, the two were more or less relieved. With a loud shout from Shui Leihan, a small and exquisite bottle gourd suddenly appeared in midair. A stream of wine flowed out from the mouth of the bottle gourd in an endless stream. Shui Leihan raised his head and sucked the endless stream of wine into his mouth. East Emperor spiritual wine. Chu Yang had drunk this kind of diluted liquor before. Even a diluted cup of wine could increase one's cultivation base by no less than several hundred years. But what Shui Leihan was drinking now was the original wine. And that small gourd seemed to have an endless capacity, and it kept pouring into Shui Leihan's mouth. And the reversal of time and space created by the tornado was still gradually expanding, and the range was slowly increasing. In the eyes of Chu Yang and the others, what happened in this snowy mountain was also rapidly reversing. The continuous river of time, in that black hole, was like a white horse passing by. In a moment 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years had passed. Chu Yang and the others were all dazzled. They really never thought that they would be able to see such a wonderful scene in their lives. And all of this was actually reproduced by someone out of thin air. A moment ago, they were clearly seeing an old man dying of old age, but in the blink of an eye, they saw the scene when this old man was first born and when he died. This feeling was really indescribable. And this kind of thing kept repeating over and over again. The lives of humans were replayed over and over again. The lives of beasts and birds were also replayed in the same way. The cycle repeated itself over and over again, from the end to the beginning. Shui Leihan's hand obviously sped up the reversal. In the end, everyone could only see pieces of afterimages, and they could no longer distinguish between the real and the fake. As time went by, thick white fog appeared above Shui Leihan's head, and the tornado on the mountain peak actually didn't dissipate. Obviously, he had already exerted his cultivation to the extreme, operating it with all his might. Just like tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years still flashed by just like that. He gave his all just to restore the original truth. For this truth, Shui Leihan had really given his all. For my brother Zihao, I must see the truth of what happened back then. Outside the domain of the river of time and space, the sky had already turned dark. Shui Leihan had maintained this extreme domain for an entire afternoon. Finally, the image stopped abruptly. Two people entered the snowy mountain. Their clothes were in tatters and their bodies were covered in wounds. They looked like they were on the verge of death. The image stopped right at this moment. Shui Leihan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, he took out another gourd of wine, brought it to his mouth and sucked. He actually swallowed the entire gourd of wine into his stomach. Then, the image moved slowly, and the two people went to a valley in the mountain with great difficulty. At the entrance of the valley, there was a stone tablet erected in the white snow, Valley of Mourning Souls. The two people sat under the stone tablet and rested for a while. It was obvious that their physical strength had long been exhausted, and their inner core was also close to being exhausted. The two of them were clearly high-level saints, yet they were actually so weak. One could only imagine what they had gone through and what they had faced along the way. A strong gust of wind suddenly blew, and a black-robed figure appeared in front of the two people without any warning. His face was thin, and his gaze was as sharp as an eagle's. At this moment, Shui Leihan paid special attention to Yuan Tianjie's eyes and the expression on his face. There was only a trace of indescribable cruelty in his gaze. Chapter 24:13. Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun. When Yuan Tianjie appeared, those two people struggled to stand up. Although they were already exhausted, they still stood straight. That kind of pride still remained on their faces. Although they were facing a heavenly emperor of a generation, in this place, the two of them represented Purple Cloud Heaven. Purple Cloud Heaven, the pride of Heavenly Emperor Purple Cloud, no matter when or where, could not be blasphemed. They would definitely not show weakness in front of anyone. Although it was very difficult for them to do so, that kind of spirit, that strength of character that belonged to Purple Cloud Heaven, was clearly displayed. Don't know why, when he saw this scene, Chu Yang suddenly felt that his eyes were hot, and his nose was also somewhat dry. Even such a frivolous person like Lian Xueqi also unconsciously straightened her back at this moment, when she saw the scene in front of her. Her gaze was solemn. The scene of the black hole. You guys are here. Yuan Tianjie's voice was very cold. How is the situation on Purple Cloud Heaven's side now? Purple Cloud Heaven is still persevering. One of them looked straight at Yuan Tianjie, his voice weak but sonorous. We will definitely persevere. We will wait for a long time, waiting for the arrival of reinforcements. Can you guys still hold on? Yuan Tianjie's voice was full of ridicule. As long as there are still brothers in Purple Cloud Heaven alive, even if there's only one person, we will also persevere to the end and never give up. The person on the left looked somewhat indignant. I just want to ask Your Excellency Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun, when will Mo Yun Tian's reinforcements arrive? Yuan Tianjie was silent for a while and asked, How is Zihao's personal situation now? The two stood up together and said sternly, His Majesty is invincible. Invincible? Yuan Tianjie sneered. If he's really invincible, then why are you guys still asking for reinforcements? The two people's voices became cold. If not for Your Excellency Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun's promise to my brother that day, we also wouldn't come here at this moment. Promise? Ha! Yuan Tianjie laughed. Laughter. The two people's gazes gradually turned cold. Faintly, in the depths of their eyes, there was a trace of despair, but they still held on to the last hope and were unwilling to give up. They said, Heavenly Demon Invasion, could it be that Your Excellency Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun actually want to watch with folded arms and stay out of it? The entire Mo Yun Tian is going to watch with folded arms? We, the Purple Cloud Heaven, have a total of 700 million people. Every one of us is fighting bravely, bathed in blood. Towards this, the entire Mo Yun Tian is actually completely indifferent. Yuan Tianjie was silent. After a long time, he suddenly said, Why can't we just stand by and watch? Why can't we just stay out of this? I can't wait for Zihao to die. Why isn't he dead yet? Why? The two men's faces immediately turned cold. His Majesty, the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor, will never die. Even if you die, His Majesty will not die. Another person said coldly, It seems that we've come here to humiliate ourselves. We'll take our leave now. We no longer expect Mo Yun Tian to send any reinforcements. He. Even Mo Yun Tian's Heavenly Emperor is so narrow-minded, what can we expect from Mo Yun Tian? Farewell? Yuan Tianjie finally sneered cruelly. Do the two of you think that you can still leave? What do you mean? Do you actually want to kill us? The two men were somewhat in disbelief. It's fine if you don't help, but we're all Tian K's compatriots after all. You actually want to kill us at this time? Compatriots? Who told you that I'm from Tian K? Yuan Tianjie suddenly sneered. Without any warning. His appearance suddenly changed. Whoosh, whoosh, wings emerged. His sharp mouth and fangs also appeared. A thick black aura suddenly rose. The two men opposite him exclaimed at the same time, Heavenly Demon, you're actually the incarnation of a heavenly demon? But this cry, the meaning of surprise, was far less intense than the anger and despair. Yuan Tianjie was a heavenly demon. This proved that the request for reinforcements this time was a complete failure. His Majesty's entrusted task could not be completed. Immediately, the two of them calmed down. They took a deep breath and prepared to fight. An awe-inspiring and resolute aura emitted from these two people who were at the end of their rope. Like a fighting bull. Straight to the sky. One of them closed his eyes tightly. 2 lines of tears slowly dripped from his dry eyes. He sighed deeply. Your Majesty, I'm sorry. Your Majesty. Not being able to fight side by side with you is the regret of the 2 of us brothers. Your Majesty, I hope that in the next life, I'll be fortunate enough to become your guard again. The 2 of them sighed at the same time. But in their hearts there was still hope. They hoped that their other brothers would be able to get the Saint Lord to send troops as soon as possible to save Purple Cloud Heaven from its crisis. If that was the case, the 2 of them would be able to rest in peace even if they died. Even if their souls left the spring, they would be able to close their eyes in peace. Since we're acquaintances, I'll tell you one more thing. Don't pin your hopes on Master Yun. Yuan Tianjia laughed strangely. What? What did you say? The 2 of them shouted at the same time. Because the Saint Lord will not send troops either. Yuan Tianjia laughed strangely. Do you know why Purple Cloud Heaven has been fighting for so long, but they still haven't received any official reinforcements from Tian Ke? The 2 of them stared at each other, their bodies trembling slightly. Why? Why? The reason is very simple. Firstly, it's because of me. I've been controlling the output of intelligence all along. Also, it's because of Master Yun. He completely suppressed Purple Cloud Heaven's battle report. Zihao is definitely going to die this time. The reason why you can't reach the Eastern Royal Heavens is because the Saint Lord and I have already completely blocked off the path to Purple Cloud Heaven. The reason why Xue Leihan didn't help is because the Saint Lord purposely revealed a trace of the profound meaning of heaven. Xue Leihan is now in seclusion to break through. He definitely won't be able to come out without 8 to 10 years. Although revealing the profound meaning of the heavens may create a person who can contend against the saint in the future, Zihao and Xue Leihan's joint invincibility will disappear from this point onwards. The advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Actually, before Purple Cloud Heaven was attacked, Master Yun already knew that the extraterrestrial demons were going to send troops. All of this was a setup against Purple Cloud Heaven. Yuan Tianjia's words hit the hearts of the 2 of them one by one, making them feel completely hopeless. And these words also hit Xue Leihan's heart at the same time. Right now, Xue Leihan's entire body was trembling from extreme anger. Master Yun. Fuck you! You 2 bastards who deserve to die 1,000 times, 10,000 times. The 2 of them roared with extreme grief and indignation. At the same time, they pounced forward without any regard for their lives. This was obviously an absolutely unbalanced battle. A heavenly emperor who came prepared and was full of energy was fighting against 2 7-star guards who were at their wits' end and covered in injuries. But the 2 of them had already gone crazy. They had already gone crazy from despair, when one of them died in Yuan Tianjia's hands and the other was sent flying by Yuan Tianjia's attack and embedded deep into the snow. Chu Yang and the rest almost wanted to turn their heads away. They couldn't bear to watch anymore. But they couldn't not watch either. The 7-star guard's eyes were filled with tears when he was about to die. His body couldn't move at all, and he was still murmuring, Your Majesty. Your Majesty. You must take care of yourself, you must live, you must live. In the image, Yuan Tianjia laughed maniacally. He completely destroyed the souls of the 2 of them and smashed their bodies into the glacial ground, thousands of feet below. Now that I've dealt with the 2 of you and cut off the last possibility of asking for help, I'm going to Purple Cloud Heavens now. Let's see Zihao's final outcome. Ha! Yuan Tianjia laughed maniacally. He flew away with satisfaction and satisfaction. Thousands of feet below the glacial ground, among the ownerless corpses that had clearly lost their souls, one of them was actually still moving. It was trying its best to climb up bit by bit. It broke through layers of ice and climbed all the way up. In the end, all the bones in its body had been ground to pieces and covered the entire path. But it was still climbing up, continuously climbing up. It stubbornly wanted to climb out, never stopping from beginning to end. The image moved slowly along with this corpse. Finally, when it was about 300 feet from the ground, the bones of this corpse's limbs were completely ground to pieces. Even its teeth were ground to pieces and broken. That corpse finally lay there quietly. It didn't move anymore. This is a wave of resentment driving the corpse to carry out the original owner's last wish. It has nothing to do with life or soul. Xueqi's voice was a little choked. It was snowing heavily all year round on the snow mountain. No one knew how many years had passed. The corpses of the two 7-star guards, one was 10,000 feet below, and the other was 300 feet below. They were motionless. However, the spiritual energy contained in the two corpses was constantly nourishing this place. Finally, in a place not far away, a snow-white thing grew. Revolving mysterious jade ginseng! Xueqi looked up and sighed. At this moment, the image changed very quickly. It was snowing heavily, and no one knew how many years had passed in a moment. Finally, one day, a figure in fluttering white robes arrived at the snowy mountain, seemingly searching for something. It's the Demon Empress. Why is she here? Chu Yan was a little confused. The Demon Empress was constantly lifting up mountains, as if she was looking for something. Finally, she saw that revolving mysterious jade ginseng. The Demon Empress's expression was obviously a little surprised. Even for someone at the level of D Empress, the revolving mysterious jade ginseng was still a rare treasure. The Demon Empress carefully put away the revolving mysterious jade ginseng. Then she saw that corpse. Intentionally or unintentionally, she went up and looked at it. Unexpectedly, she found that there was a faint trace of crystal in that person's bones. The Demon Empress was suddenly astonished. She carefully went forward to take a look at the position and muttered, "Isn't this one of Zihao's 7-star guards? This scar was left behind when I fought with him back then. It was because his moves were too ruthless that I left behind this scar. It was to give him a lesson that he would never be able to erase in his entire life. Besides this, there shouldn't be anyone else who left behind a similar scar in this place. If he's really Zihao's guard, why did he die here? Why didn't he die in purple cloud heavens?" The Demon Empress frowned and pondered. Chapter 24:14. On the snowy ground, the Demon Empress' white clothes were whiter than snow. She looked at the corpse in front of her and carefully checked the remaining scars. Then, she walked down and looked at the broken bones along the way. Suddenly, she looked up at the sky and sighed. "Good man!" Yao Xianer bowed to the corpse and said with a serious expression, "You are indeed Zihao's subordinate." After that, the Demon Empress flipped over the entire mountain and found another corpse. She searched carefully again, and her face was filled with deep respect. "There are only two people. There is no one else. Zihao's personal guard actually died in the dark cloud heaven." The Demon Empress frowned. "No, I have to ask Yuan Tianjie. If Yuan Tianjie is playing tricks, then I will seek justice for Zihao." Then, she carefully kept the two corpses and sighed. "How can loyal souls and righteous bones be left outside like this? Wait for me to send you back to the purple cloud heaven for a proper burial. Bury you together with your Majesty's clothes and cenotaph, guards in life, loyal souls in death." The Demon Empress' white clothes fluttered and she flew away. This snowy mountain regained its silence. The image finally stopped. There was silence. Only two pa-pa sounds could be heard. Xue Leihan closed his eyes and 2 drops of tears fell on the ice under his feet. After a long time, Xue Leihan suddenly looked up at the sky and howled. Tears rolled down his face and formed a line. He said in a low voice in pain, "Brother!" Xue Leihan's tall and straight body finally bent slightly. His head was also lowered and he slowly sat on the ground. His face was full of sweat and mixed with his tears, making his face a little mottled. What he had done just now. Even a powerful person like Xue Leihan couldn't take it anymore. Although he had taken a large amount of Dongwang wine to replenish his energy, he was still almost at the point of being overloaded. Reversing time for 1,000,000 years in one go to find out the truth was such a huge project. Shui Leihan forcefully reversed time for 1,000,000 years with his own strength. If such an action was really revealed, it would definitely be enough to shock the whole world, including the Emperor One, the Empress, and the only saint. At this moment, the most important thing was to recover his physical strength that had been exhausted to the limit. Xueqi stood closely behind his elder brother. He was fully alert and guarded him. Even though she usually talked back and didn't know what to say, but at this moment, she didn't care. If anyone wanted to take advantage of Shui Leihan's weakened state to harm him, Xueqi wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice his life. He would protect him with his life to ensure his brother's safety. The Demon Empress found the remains and went to look for Yuan Tianjie. But that was a matter of another scope, and it couldn't be found here. As for what happened after the Demon Empress found Yuan Tianjie, no one knew. However, the Demon Empress and Yuan Tianjie did not fight after all, so Yuan Tianjie must have used flowery words to cover it up. It was late at night. Zi Xieching had already caught a snow antelope and started to roast it. Chu Yang also took out a lot of dry rations from his space. It warmed up for a moment. A long time passed, until the moon was high in the sky. Shui Leihan finally recovered. Although his face was still a little pale, his usual bearing had already reappeared. The first thing he said when he opened his eyes was a long sigh. So all of this is a conspiracy. Even the Saint knew about the invasion of the extraterrestrial demons in advance. Was there anything that the Cloud Master couldn't do? Couldn't be used? Regarding this matter, Chu Yang remained silent for a long time. He felt that he shouldn't say anything. After all, they were ultimately relatives. Although Master Yun didn't know that he was actually Shui Leihan's biological brother-in-law, Shui Leihan himself was aware of it. However, after holding it in for a long time, Chu Yang finally said fiercely, "Logically speaking, I shouldn't be the one to say anything at this point, but I still can't help but say, that brother-in-law of yours is really not a good thing. He's a pure bastard." "Bah! Calling him a bastard is an insult to both the male and female bastards," Chu Yang said angrily. "He's worse than a beast. He's the #1 bastard in the world. He's your brother-in-law." Shui Leihan looked conflicted, and so did Xueqi. "Brother, you're wrong. When did we admit that he's my brother-in-law?" Chu Yang said. "Can you get rid of the connection if you don't admit it? That bastard married your sister. If he's not your brother-in-law, then what is he?" Xueqi jumped up. "Who fucking admitted that the wife of that bastard is my sister? Damn it, which brother in the world is willing to admit that he has such a sister? Fuck her grandma." Shui Leihan slapped him on the head. Shut up, shut up! I shouldn't have scolded him like that." Xueqi fell to the ground from the slap. He held his head in remorse, but his mouth still didn't stop. He was indeed a weirdo. Shui Leihan sighed. But now, he really didn't want to be angry with him. "We've been investigating what happened back then all the way here. Until now, we've basically understood half of it." Shui Leihan looked up at the sky and sighed. "That day, Zihao and I joined hands and made us successful. But it's also because of this that it became the main cause of his death." Chu Yang smiled bitterly. "Perhaps the one that the Saint really wants to deal with is not just Zihao, but all of you, or any one of you. As long as you and Zihao exist together, he won't be able to eat or sleep well. Because other than the two of you joining hands, I believe that there's no one else in this world who can threaten his safety." "Yes, but as long as one of us is eliminated, he can rest easy from now on." Shui Leihan's face revealed a sincere mocking smile. He said lightly, "Master Yun's vision is ultimately still too short-sighted. He thought of the person who created the Calamity Sword back then. If one were to talk about a high mountain, whether it was him or Zihao, they weren't enough. Only that person was the true supreme expert. Based on Master Yun's jealousy, if he knew about the existence of that person, wouldn't he think of ways to destroy him? How would he be willing to accept that? But, if he really dared to take action, the person who would be destroyed would only be Master Yun himself. No matter how sinister Master Yun was. No matter how sinister and cunning, in the face of absolute power, there would definitely be no other outcome. Perhaps he only needed to move a finger. He could shatter the heavenly imperial court 100,000 times. Xue Leihan heaved a long sigh again. If Master Yun had known about such an existence, Zihao wouldn't have died. After witnessing the strength of humans, no matter how much internal strife there was among the ants, what's the point? Even if one was number one in the world of ants, invincible in the world and supreme in the world, he was still just an ant in the end. However, Chu Yan was thinking about another matter in his heart, me and my brothers. Now, he and his brothers already possessed considerable abilities. Once they joined forces, it seemed that they would be able to overturn the seas and rivers in the heavenly imperial court. It probably wouldn't take long before the situation between Xue Leihan and Zihao would repeat itself, or even worse. One or even a few of them might not be a match for a saint monarch. However, if all of them worked together, it would be enough to kill the Cloud Lord. Given Master Yun's narrow-minded nature of not allowing anything to threaten his safety, when that time came, as long as he knew of their existence, he would definitely attack. Not only would he use force, he would even use all kinds of methods. He would only be at ease when he and his brother's powers were weakened to the point where they couldn't threaten him. Looks like we have to be careful too. Chu Yan pondered and slowly said this. Xue Leihan was startled when he heard this. Then, he smiled bitterly. Yes, you guys do have to be careful too. Otherwise, you'll repeat the mistakes of Zihao and me. Chu Yan nodded seriously and said slowly, I won't give him this chance. In reality, what Chu Yang thought was that before he thought of it, Mo Tianji had already thought of it. Actually, if one were to talk about methods of doing things, Mo Tianji and Master Yun were almost the same, although Mo Tianji wouldn't be as despicable as Master Yun. But when dealing with enemies, Mo Tianji was equally extreme and equally unscrupulous. So if one put aside their standpoints, Master Yun and Mo Tianji were truly the same kind of people. They probably had a lot in common with each other. After everyone ate and rested for a while, Xue Leihan completely recovered his energy. Then, he started on another task. Soul searching. Searching for the loyal souls who had battled here 1,000,000 years ago. Although he knew that the chances were slim, Xue Leihan had been doing this for many years. As long as it was an old place where the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud's subordinates had died in battle, Xue Leihan would search their souls. Unfortunately, in these 1,000,000 years, he had never found anyone's remnant soul. This is the battlefield. Yuan Tianji is dead now, and the restrictions he set up previously have already lost their effect. Moreover, since the resentment left behind by the heroic souls back then is so strong that it can still support the corpse to crawl after death, I believe that there should be some remnant souls left behind, Xue Leihan said. Chu Jiang, however, remained silent. Actually, everyone knew that even if Yuan Tianji didn't completely destroy the souls of the two 7-star guards back then, after 1,000,000 years of wind and snow, nothing would be left behind. What Xue Leihan was doing now was useless. On this point, even if he was the East Emperor and had several experts in the imperial court, it was impossible for him to search for the heroic souls back then. But no one stopped him. That was because it was more of a show of sincerity. Powerful soul energy spread out continuously. The search process lasted for an entire night, but the end result was as everyone had expected. Xue Leihan looked up and sighed, lamenting that the heavens didn't protect the heroic souls. Until near dawn, when there was suddenly darkness, an elegant voice said, May I know why Your Majesty, the East Emperor, is summoning souls here in the middle of the night and going through so much trouble? I'm guilty. Yesterday, I watched TV with my wife called Falling in Love with My Best Male Friend. After watching 2 episodes, I felt that it was quite interesting. I've never watched dramas before, so I searched online, and found that there were a total of 34 episodes. So I started watching from yesterday afternoon until 8:30 this morning. Chapter 24:15. This voice was very elegant and peaceful, but it seemed to have come out of nowhere. Before this, even Chu Yang didn't feel anything strange. Xueqi's face was also full of surprise. Although he had sensed the arrival of the owner of the voice, it was still a surprise that this person could come so close. Expert. Top expert. Chu Yang had already come to this conclusion. And to be able to talk to Dong Wang like this, although the tone was respectful, this person was undoubtedly an expert among experts. But Xue Leihan seemed to have already known this person's arrival. He didn't show any change in his expression and said with a smile, "I knew I couldn't hide it from you. The cultivation of the two of you is really fast. In such a short time, you have already reached such a level. This is really worthy of celebration." In the darkness, two figures floated over like the wind and landed in front of everyone. They smiled and said, "Your Majesty, Dong Wang is too kind." Chu Yang looked up and saw that one of them had long eyebrows and was handsome, while the other had a slim figure and was actually a stunning beauty. It was just that her eyebrows were like swords and she looked valiant. For some reason, Chu Yang actually felt a sense of familiarity with these two people. It was as if he had seen these two people before. This made Chu Yang a little puzzled. As long as I have seen such people before, I will never forget them. Is it an illusion? If it's not an illusion, where have I seen these two people before? Xueqi pretended to be enlightened and snorted, then he smiled. Then he said, "Are the two of you the lords of the 10 directions underground world of our heaven imperial court?" The handsome man smiled bitterly and said, "You flatter me. The so-called lords of the 10 directions underground world seems to be very impressive. In fact, in short, in this heaven imperial court, they are really useless. At best, they are the managers of some wandering souls. How can they be called the lords of the 10 directions underground world?" Xueqi laughed and nodded. Apparently, she agreed with the man's words. This man's words were undoubtedly very direct and unusually frank. Indeed, in this heaven imperial court, the few small worlds under it were still stronger. Most of the ordinary people could leave behind a trace of soul after they died. Reincarnation, however, the heavenly imperial court was too martial, and there were too many martial experts. In order to avoid future troubles, the enemy would often use the method of destroying one's soul. The last trace of the soul was completely destroyed. The underground world could not interfere with the severing of karma. Although there were still more ordinary people compared to martial artists and ordinary people, that was only because the population of the entire Heaven Imperial Court was so small. In fact, a battle between two powerful martial artists could easily cause the souls of all the ordinary people within hundreds of miles to vanish in an instant, and they would lose the chance to be reincarnated. After the end of an ordinary person's lifespan, after their souls passed through the 10 underground worlds, their intelligence would be completely wiped out. Reincarnation, but for practitioners, as long as one's cultivation base exceeded heaven level, one's own original soul would have the ability to transcend. Even if one's lifespan ended, they would still try to take over another's body to prolong their life, and would not enter the underground world of 10 directions. Therefore, even though the job of being in charge of Yin souls seemed to be very glamorous and had a lot of authority, it was very rare for his subordinates to actually be able to receive the souls of powerhouses. Even though he was the master of the underground world of 10 directions, he was at most the manager of a huge organization. However, in this world, if there wasn't such a place, it really wouldn't do. When Mo Qingwu and Zi Xieching suddenly found out about the identity of the two people in front of them, their expressions changed a little. Being in charge of Yin souls? Yin souls, this kind of thing, was always an especially terrifying thing for women. No matter how amazing their strength was, there was no exception. The eyes of the young man looked at the place where the soul of the tribulation was hidden, and he said with a bitter smile, "For example, the soul of that powerhouse above, even if we take it into the underground world, we still have to take a huge risk, because the strength of such a soul of tribulation is enough to turn the entire underground world of 10 directions upside down, and even break through the underground seal and enter the mortal world again is not too difficult." Chu Jian smiled lightly and said, Although the soul of a powerhouse at the end of his life is always incomplete or completely destroyed, from another perspective, it can also be said that this is the price that the powerhouse has to pay in order to pursue his own continuous improvement. Generation after generation of people are born, or they were weak in their previous lives, but as time goes by, many of the weak in the beginning eventually become powerhouses. And powerhouses are always born from the weak. Or maybe this is the principle. Although these powerhouses who were formed later actually don't know how miserable their previous lives were. Haha! Shuiqi also laughed out loud. That graceful woman smiled sweetly and said, "What you said makes sense. Because, as long as one hasn't reached the level of eternal immortality, he can't be called a true powerhouse." Shuai Leihan smiled bitterly. "The so-called eternal immortality," he sighed. "It's easier said than done." "Indeed," that beautiful woman admitted. "Up till now, there hasn't been such a powerhouse in the Heaven Imperial Court," Shuai Leihan said lightly. "It's actually the same. When a powerhouse reaches a certain level, his soul has also grown stronger. But if his physical body is destroyed and his soul is weakened to a certain extent, it's really better to self-destruct and end it all. It's also better than becoming a remnant soul and being controlled by others. This is also a pride that belongs to a powerhouse, or it can be said to be a kind of cowardice," Chu Yang said quietly. That man looked at Chu Yang, his eyes gentle. He said softly, "Tribulation Sword Master, both of us express our heartfelt gratitude to you." As he said, the two of them bowed slightly to Chu Yang at the same time. Chu Yang's mind turned quickly and he understood. "You are the two supreme martial artists, Chen Feng and Lu Yun?" He finally understood where the sense of familiarity came from. At the Heaven Imperial Court's Three Heavens Lake of Despair, there were statues of the two supreme martial artists. Chu Yang still remembered the majestic aura that the two stone statues had exuded. At the same time, he also understood why the two of them thanked him. Because Wu Jueqing was the direct descendant of the couple. He was also the last bloodline of the two experts left in the human world, the last legacy of their orthodoxy. And Chu Yang, because of his identity as the Tribulation Sword Master, and because of some entanglement, he untied the knot in Wu Jueqing's heart, allowing Wu Jueqing to have the courage to live on with a goal. "It's nothing. It's not worth mentioning," Chu Yang said very respectfully. "Both of you are too polite." At the mention of Wu Jueqing, Chu Yang couldn't help but think of Chu Luer, who went to look for his master, and Mo Tianji, who accompanied her, and those seniors who fought against the extraterrestrial demons in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Chu Yang sighed subconsciously. He thought of too many things in an instant. For a moment, he didn't know what to feel in his heart. Many tribulation seniors broke through the limits of the heavens and ascended the legendary Heaven Imperial Court. All for the sake of eliminating the demons. However, to the people of the Heaven Imperial Court, the legendary Heaven Imperial Court and the higher-level Heaven Imperial Court often had many unbearable people. Even a celestial emperor could be the incarnation of an extraterrestrial demon. Even the so-called number one person in the Heaven Imperial Court was actually so unbearable. It was really a pity. Wu Qinfeng, the handsome young man between the two. He looked at Chu Yang meaningfully and said softly, "To Sword Master Chu, it may be nothing. But to the two of us, it's a great favor. I know that Sword Master Chu is a generous and magnanimous person who never forgets to repay kindness. My wife and I are also not long-winded people. We only have one thing to tell you. If Sword Master Chu is free in the future, you can return to the Lake of Despair for a visit." "Huh?" Chu Yang was startled. He raised his head and looked at Wu Qinfeng. Wu Qinfeng's words were really abrupt and even strange. Since the beginning of time, it seemed that there were very few experts who could return to their original place after ascending. Of course, Wu Qinfeng and his wife were an exception. Otherwise, there wouldn't be Wu Jueqing. But to return to the Heaven Imperial Court seemed to be a very, very difficult thing. Now that you mention it, I know what you mean. Chu Yang wanted to ask more, but unexpectedly, Wu Chunfeng had already turned his head and said something to Shui Leihan. Even though Wu Chunfeng was in an awkward position now, purely based on his status, he was above De and the others. He could even be on par with Master Yun, the Holy Monarch. Chu Yang couldn't rashly interfere in his conversation with Shui Leihan, the Lord of Yin Souls. But he saw that the two of them had a heavy expression on their faces. But he couldn't hear what they were talking about at all. Only Chen Luyun, who was dressed in a white robe that was purer than snow, gave him a slight smile. There seemed to be a deeper meaning in her smile. But this smile was also really beautiful. Chu Yang looked at Chen Luyun, but he was still thinking hard in his heart. The lake of despair of the three heavens? Could it be that there's some special object there, or a special meaning? As he was thinking, he suddenly felt a piercing pain on the left side of his waist. This attack was really too sudden. Chu Yang was surprised that there were actually enemies attacking at this time and place, and even hurt his confidant in such a situation. It was simply inconceivable. He also felt that the soft flesh on the right side of his waist was twisted into a fried dough twist. Chu Yang couldn't hold it in anymore. He jumped up with a scream, only to see that the ones who were ruthless were Zi Xieching and Mo Qingwu. The two beauties, one on the left and one on the right, stood beside him. Their two small hands were exerting force on his waist. It was very obvious that Chu Yang's fierce stare at Chen Luyun had aroused intense jealousy from the two girls. In this world, there were less than 5 people who could injure Chu Yang so severely without making a sound. Unfortunately, there were 2 of them here, opposite him. Chen Luyun couldn't help but smile when she saw this. How could she, who had experienced many things, not know why the 2 girls were ruthless? She said harmoniously, "Sword Master Chu. Sometimes, when a man looks at a beautiful girl, it will cause big trouble." Chu Yang sucked in air with a hissing sound in his mouth and nodded repeatedly. He forced a smile and said, "Yes, yes. Recommend a book, written by a good brother. I specially invite everyone to support it and add to my collection. Mysterious Divine Devil Pattern / Chapter 24:16. On one side, Shui Leihan and Wu Chufeng had already walked to one side and were talking telepathically. However, as the 2 of them talked, they seemed to have an argument. The speed of their conversation was obviously increasing, and the argument was also gradually escalating. Wu Chufeng shook his head repeatedly, but Shui Leihan pressed on. In the end, Wu Chufeng stuck out a finger awkwardly. Shui Leihan didn't back down and stuck out 5 fingers. Wu Chunfeng shook his head violently, so Shui Leihan bent down 1 finger and turned it into 4. Wu Chunfeng continued to shake his head, refusing to comply. Shui Leihan bent down another finger and turned it into 3. And Mo Qingwu watched curiously and asked in a low voice, "What are they doing? Playing finger-guessing games?" As soon as she said that, Shui Qi and Chen Luyun staggered at the same time. Shui Leihan and Wu Chufeng, who were playing finger-guessing games, also subconsciously looked over. Chu Yang almost sneered. 2 Dominator-level characters, how could they just play finger-guessing games when discussing matters? And Mo Qingwu's conjecture is indeed a little too outrageous. But Wu Qinfeng's expression was unusually miserable, looking like he was about to go crazy, but he still stubbornly stuck out 1 finger. Shui Leihan also seemed to be angry. But facing Wu Qinfeng's unyielding attitude, he had no choice but to bend down another finger, turning the number into 2. Wu Qinfeng was still shaking his head, still unwilling to give in. Shui Leihan was furious. He actually said loudly, "Wu Qinfeng, you have to give me face. When you were in charge of the dead souls in the heavenly continent, it was I who appointed you. Later on, when you competed for the title of World Master of the 10 Directions Underground, in order to let you win, the Eastern Royal Heavens spent countless manpower and resources. Why is it so difficult to ask you to do such a small thing now? You keep making excuses. Why don't you think about it?" The Eastern Royal Heavens was obviously trying to repay his kindness. It seemed to be able to make Shui Leihan do this. Obviously, this matter had already exceeded the scope of what ordinary people could imagine. Wu Qinfeng's originally good expression completely turned bitter. He nodded helplessly. "All right, 2 it is." Shui Leihan snorted and said, "3?" Wu Qinfeng lowered his head dejectedly. "You might as well kill me." Shui Leihan laughed loudly. The rock-paper-scissors game had come to an end, but the situation on the other side was still in the ascendant. Chen Liyun's beautiful eyes kept drifting towards Zi Xiecheng. There was a strange expression in his eyes that made people ponder over it. He seemed to be smiling but not smiling. Zi Xiecheng, on the other hand, was looking at the sky with a look of indifference. Chen Liyun finally smiled and said, "This little sister looks very familiar. Where have we met before?" Zi Xiecheng said. "Humph." The meaning behind this voice was extremely complicated, and it contained a hint of hostility. However, Chen Liyun did not feel offended in the slightest. Instead, he chuckled. He said, "This voice is also very familiar. We must have seen it before." His tone was very certain. Zi Xiecheng was getting more and more unhappy. She shouted angrily, "What are you trying to say? What do you mean by familiar with this and that? Are you showing off how good your memory is?" Chen Liyun giggled and said, "The memory of that battle in the Black Blood Forest is still fresh in our minds. Lord Zi's power is really earth-shattering. But I've never thought that Lord Z is actually a woman, and such a beautiful and moving woman at that. Moreover," she laughed and said, "furthermore, this jealousy. It's actually so big." Zi Xiecheng's face instantly turned red, and she was speechless for a long time. Actually, when Chen Feng and Chen Liyun appeared, Zi Xiecheng recognized their identities at first glance. However, she did not immediately go forward to acknowledge them. It was because of this awkward matter in between. During that battle, Zi Xiecheng had been shrouded in black fog from start to end, and did not reveal her true appearance at all. She originally thought that as long as she did not take the initiative to reveal this matter, Wu Qinfeng and his wife might not be able to see through her identity. Now that she was exposed by Chen Liyun, she could not help but blush. She said angrily, "I also did not expect that the 2 of you who lost to me back then would be so different now. You actually became the Lord of the 10 Directions world in the Heaven Imperial Court. It is only right that I look up to the 2 of you." Chen Liyun laughed and walked forward, not caring about Zi Xiecheng's cold face. He directly held her hand and said gently, "The reason why the 2 of us are where we are today is all thanks to that battle back then. It was after that battle that the 2 of us realized something, and that was why His Majesty the East Emperor looked for us. Finally, we became the Lords of the Heaven Imperial Court today. To be honest, besides His Majesty the East Emperor, we also have to thank you, Lord Z, for being where we are today." Zi Xiecheng forced a smile and said, "Both of you have really improved your cultivation during this period of time. How can I dare to accept the title of Lord Z now?" Chen Liyun smiled bitterly and shook his head. "There is no lack of resources for cultivation underground. Furthermore, we have such an identity now that we can absorb the spiritual energy of souls from all directions. That is why we can improve so quickly. However, such a cultivation process is not worth mentioning. It was obvious that there were still areas that weren't satisfactory. This bitterness was something that couldn't be told to outsiders." Chen Liyun looked at Zi Xiecheng with sincerity, and actually looked at her with some envy. He said, "However, although Lord Z did not improve very quickly during this period of time, you no longer have the original demonic aura in you. From now on, you have embarked on a bright and smooth path to the Supreme Tao. That is truly something worth celebrating." Upon hearing that, Zi Xiecheng subconsciously let out a long breath. She also smiled bitterly and said with some lingering fear, "This process is just as you said. It is not worth mentioning." Chen Liyun blinked his beautiful eyes in understanding. Suddenly, he leaned close to Zi Xiecheng's ear and asked softly, "But I wonder, what is the relationship between Lord Z and the Heavenly Emperor of Zi Shao then?" Upon hearing this, Zi Xiecheng could not help but widen her eyes in astonishment. She was stunned for a moment, and did not know what to say. After a while she said, "Your question is a little strange. How can I have any relationship with the Heavenly Emperor of Zishao? The Heavenly Emperor of Zishao fell 1,000,000 years ago, and but from this 1,000,000 years, there is still an unreachable distance." She paused and said, "Taking a step back, the world I was originally in was actually not this world of the Heavenly Imperial Court. Between the two of us, there is really no way we can fight, right?" Chen Luyun looked at Zi Xueqing's face and saw that her face was full of doubts. Obviously, these doubts came from the bottom of her heart, and there was no element of pretense. He could not help but be stunned and said, "This, is it not?" Wu Qifeng walked over at the right time and said, "Let's go." He turned and said to Shui Leihan, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. I will not forget about that matter." Shui Leihan nodded lightly. Wu Qifeng and his wife greeted Chu Yang. Wu Qifeng smiled and said, "Sword Master, don't forget, the Heavenly Imperial Court, the Lake of Despair." Then, the husband and wife rose with the wind and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Even after they left, they did not forget to remind Chu Yang again. Could it be that there was really some secret? Shui Leihan smiled bitterly. "This guy is still biased towards you. I originally did not intend to reveal the secret so early." Chu Yang asked doubtfully. "Secret? What secret?" Shui Leihan smiled. "You will know when you get there. Even if I explain it now, without the actual thing in front of me, what's the point?" Chu Yang was stunned. What was going on? Did they have to be so mysterious? Why were they trying to be so mysterious? Zi Xueqing frowned and asked Chu Yang, "That secret can only be revealed when we return to the lower realm. Thinking too much about it now will only create more trouble for ourselves. But I don't understand why that supreme martial artist Luyun would actually ask me about my relationship with the Heavenly Emperor of the Purple Clouds. His Majesty and I did not know each other at all. When he died, I probably had not reincarnated yet. We were separated by so many years, how could there be any relationship? This is simply inexplicable. It makes me so flustered. I really don't know what to say." As Zi Xueqing spoke, there was an inexplicable smile on her face. Obviously, in her opinion, this matter that Chen Luyun was talking about was an extremely ridiculous matter. If Supreme Martial Artist Luyun still had some sense in his mind, he would not say such retarded words. But she just had to say it. If that was not retarded, then what was? Even the stupidest person would be able to know that two people who were separated by hundreds of thousands of years, especially one who was born hundreds of thousands of years after the other had died. It was absolutely impossible for there to be any relationship between these two people. But when Zi Xueqing said this, Dong Wang Shui Leihan was actually unexpectedly stunned. Dong Wang Xueqing originally had his back facing Zi Xueqing and was about to say something to Chu Yang. But at this moment, everyone felt that this Dong Wang Xueqing's entire body suddenly stiffened. As if something unbelievable had happened to him, he stood stiffly in front of Chu Yang just like that. After a long time, he suddenly turned around. Because his neck turned too abruptly, it made a "kacha" sound. Very strangely, he came in front of Zi Xueqing. His pair of eyes stared at Zi Xueqing's face carefully. He looked so attentively and carefully. Slowly, this Dong Wang Xueqing's eyes actually turned a little red. He carefully looked at Zi Xueqing's eyes, eyebrows, face, nose, lips and chin. The more he looked, the more agitated he became. Finally, he actually clapped his hands fiercely. Chu Yang was stunned. Huh! But he saw that Shui Leihan's eyes were still focused, but his lips were trembling. After a long time, he finally asked, "Miss Zi, where did you come from in the past?" When he asked this question, there was a deep sense of disbelief in the depths of Shui Leihan's eyes. There was also a little bit of unbelievable joy that was slowly rising. This little bit of joy seemed to have added a lot of vitality to his body. Chapter 24:17. Zi Xueqing smiled faintly. "Does Your Majesty Dong Wang also have such doubts?" What's wrong with the heavens, haha? If the person in front of her was not Dongwang Shueleihan, Zi Xieching even wanted to laugh at him. What kind of thoughts and logic did these people have? Did they have any brains at all? Even an idiot would know that this was impossible, right? Answer me, where did you come from? Answer me! Shueleihan asked persistently. His voice was actually a little anxious. I don't belong to this Heaven Imperial Court world, nor am I a native of this Heaven Imperial Court world. Zi Xieching was helpless. She said concisely, My hometown is a world that has now been destroyed. It's extremely far away from here. As for how far, it's hard to describe with numbers. Also, I'm not a human, but a demon. The reason why I can transform into a human is because… Shueleihan interrupted her. What I want to know is not these. These are all not important. What I want to know is, where did you come from? Zi Xieching couldn't help but be stunned. Her expression was extremely strange. It was no wonder that Zi Xieching was so surprised. In her mind, she had clearly explained her origins just now. Why would Donghuang still ask her where she came from? Could it be that this Lord Donghuang's brain was flooded with water? Otherwise, why couldn't he even get the main point of a question? He kept asking. Shueleihan didn't seem to be surprised by Zi Xieching's surprised expression. He took a deep breath again and closed his eyes, as if to calm his emotions. Then he said, Miss Zi, can you tell me in detail about your past? As much as possible. He looked at Zi Xieching, who was still in shock, as if he did not know where to start. He laughed bitterly and said, Miss Zi, you may not know this, but with my current cultivation and the ability to calculate, I'm very good at it. Although I may not be able to see through every detail, but it's roughly the same. But for you, I can't see through you at all. It seems that there's a very special thing on your body. It blocks all the prying eyes from the outside world. Oh, I see, Zi Xieching said thoughtfully. Well, after hearing Donghuang's words, I do remember some things. In the past, I did find some strange things about me, but I didn't know what was going on because I didn't know the whole story. Also, it never affected his body, so there was no need to pay attention to it anymore. It was only when His Majesty Donghuang mentioned it that I suddenly remembered. Shueleihan said solemnly. Miss Zi, I want to know about your past, all of your past. He pondered for a while and said, To me, this is perhaps very, very important. So, I understand. Zi Xieching smiled sweetly. There's nothing unspeakable about my past. It's fine to talk about it. Shueleihan smiled and nodded. If that's the case, please tell me, Miss Zi. I'm all ears. At this moment, the way Shueleihan looked at Zi Xieching was full of love. He was like a strict father who saw his naughty daughter. Although his daughter had run away from home for a long time because of her mischievous behavior, the loving father's heart was still full of love for her. Or perhaps it was pity, endless pity. In her heart, she was only worried about how much her daughter had suffered outside and would no longer remember her daughter's disobedience. As long as his daughter returned safely, nothing else mattered. That experience was really too long ago, so long that I've forgotten a lot. I only remember now that that place was called the Misty Continent. Zi Xieching was silent for a while. She sorted out her thoughts and tried hard to recall. She said softly, I was born there. At that time, I was just an ordinary white ferret. Actually, I didn't know who my parents were. Because ever since I was born, I was lonely. I was born alone in an ice-cold cave. Beside me was a pile of food. Those food didn't seem to rot. Luckily, with these food I didn't starve to death. Then, one day, after I was full again, I rummaged through the pile of food on a whim and found the innermost part. Surprisingly, I found a lot of fruits. Well, I don't know who put those fruits there. Starting from eating a strange fruit, I realized that my strength had increased. It had become very, very strong. Then I tried to walk out of the cave. In the following period of time, I realized that I was actually very strong. At least among my own kind, I was already invincible. Next, I discovered that the memory of a cultivation method suddenly appeared in my mind. I began to cultivate according to that cultivation method. As I cultivated, I ate those fruits. My progress was quite fast. I don't know if it's because I'm very talented or because of those fruits, but in any case, my progress was very fast. There was deep emotion in Zhiqiang's eyes. My home was just an ice-cold cave, but to me, it was filled with infinite warmth. I don't know who prepared all these for me, but I know that it must be my family. Only they would care so much for me. After a long, long time, my strength was already invincible in that mountainous area. I belonged to the top existence. I realized that although I was just a small white marten, the wolves, tigers, and leopards in the mountain, including some mountain spirits and wood monsters, were no longer my match. In other words, to me, not only were they no longer a threat, they were also meaningless. Without a goal, I was bored to death and wanted to go out and take a look. After I went out, I realized that in that world, I was still an almost invincible existence. Just like that, I wandered the world. Sometimes I would cause trouble. When a monster like me appeared in the human Jianghu, of course, people would gang up on me and attack me. After fighting for hundreds of years, although I was strong, I would still be injured. Sometimes a person's strength is limited, and so is a demon's strength. When I was injured, I would return to the cave to recuperate. Then I found out that only I could enter the cave. Even the top expert of that world couldn't take a single step into the cave. Regardless of whether it was water, fire, or smoke, all methods were useless. To put it in a more exaggerated way, it was invulnerable to all methods. After that, with a considerable improvement in my strength, I was really invincible in that world. Gradually, no one and no force could do anything to me. But I felt tired of it. Perhaps it's the saying that being invincible is the loneliest. At this point, Shui Leihan interrupted her and said, "Miss Z, do you know how far that world is from the Heaven Imperial Court?" Zhiqiang thought about it seriously. Then she shook her head in confusion. "I don't know, I really don't know. It's a distance that can't be described with specific numbers. It's really too far." Shui Leihan nodded and didn't interrupt her. He listened to her continue. When I was sure that I was invincible and had no opponents, I wandered around. But by chance I discovered that there were still some very powerful hidden experts in that world. So, I had opponents again and started to fight with those hidden experts. Another few hundred years passed like this. After defeating all those people, I found that I had reached a rather high level. It was also at that time that the heavens suddenly released killing intent. That world encountered a completely irresistible natural disaster. The entire world was completely destroyed in an extremely short period of time. Countless meteorites fell from the sky and smashed the entire world. Back then I thought that I was already invincible in the world, but in the face of such a natural disaster, I had no power to resist at all. At this point, there was a heartfelt fear in the depths of Zhiqiang's eyes. Everyone in the whole world was in a state of panic and despair, including me. I tried to resist but knew that I couldn't, so I could only wait for the arrival of death. But at this moment, a big hand suddenly descended from the sky and grabbed me. Then I flew up to the sky with that big hand. When I looked down, I realized that the world I was in was already torn apart, full of holes and devastation. The next moment, the whole world became pieces of debris and transformed into new meteorites or shooting stars in the sky, gradually disappearing from this world. Then I found out some things that I couldn't understand at all. The world I was in was actually just a big rock suspended in the sky. When this big rock broke apart due to some irresistible factors, most of the remaining rock fragments would become shooting stars. There were so many shooting stars in the sky, and they were so beautiful. But before that, no one knew that those shooting stars were actually a continent like the world we lived in, born due to destruction. What's more, no one knew that those beautiful shooting stars symbolized the death of countless lives every moment. The meaning behind those beautiful shooting stars was actually death. Moreover, it was the death of billions and billions of lives. Zhiqiang said, That was the realization I had at that moment, a realization that I've never forgotten. Shui Leihan's eyes continued to show heartfelt pity. He sighed softly but didn't interrupt Zi Xieching's narration. He continued to listen quietly. And Mo Qingwu, who was also listening, subconsciously moved closer to Zi Xieching. She hugged Zi Xieching's arm and looked at her silently. Zi Xieching smiled comfortingly and hugged Mo Qingwu's arm tightly as well. Then, she continued slowly. After that world was destroyed, I was brought to another strange place by that unknown hand. It was a world full of vitality, full of spiritual flowers and strange plants. But there were no living creatures in that world. No, it should be said that there were no human beings. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.